Chapter 485. You can act, I'll act too. Everyone is shameless anyway. One of them acted innocently, while the other acted passionately. This was something that everyone was happy to see. Li Yun knew that Jiang Fengxing couldn't have been killed by Fang Yan or Fang Yan's men. Since Fang Yan had already agreed to the deal, there was no need for him to kill Jiang Fengxing. On the contrary, Fang Yan hoped that Jiang Fengxing could continue to live. Why wouldn't he be happy to let the Jiang family laugh at him? On the other hand, the Jiang family wasn't willing to let Jiang Fengxing live. Jiang Fengxing's failure was like a slap to the Jiang family. He kidnapped Fengxing, but ended up being kidnapped instead. In the end, he used 30% of the shares of the Longtu Group, which was controlled by Jiang Zhulu, one of his trusted subordinates, in exchange for Fengxing. This was a humiliation to Fengxing's family. If Fang Yan wanted to bring this up in the future, Jiang Fengxing would be a living witness. When that happened, not only would the Jiang family lose face, but they would also have to take the blame for him. If he was still alive, many people in the Jiang family would feel uncomfortable. At least, Jiang Junling, who flew to Huaqing but was suppressed by Fang Yan, would be very unhappy. Otherwise, why would Jiang Zhulu dare to do such a thing? Even if Jiang Fengxing was a dog of the Jiang family, as long as his surname was Jiang, he wouldn't be hurt by an outsider like Jiang Zhulu. Jiang Zhulu knew that Li Yun and Jiang Shangxi knew about it, but he had no choice. He needed a fig leaf to cover up not only his helplessness and embarrassment, but also everyone's feelings. Before they fell out with each other, they still had to show their emotions. Li Yun's voice was filled with murderous intent. She stared at Jiang Zhulu and said, "Jiang Zhulu, it's enough to do something like this once. I'm warning you, don't ever hurt Shangxin." Jiang Zhulu glanced at Shangxin, whose eyes were red. He said calmly, "Mom, your worries are unnecessary. Shangxin is my wife. I can't even protect her. How could I hurt her?" "I hope so." Li Yun glanced at Jiang Fengxing, who was standing on the morgue. After this glance, their fates had ended, and they would never see each other again. After Li Yun left, only the newlyweds, Jiang Zhulu and Jiang Shangxin, were left in the morgue. Jiang Shangxin stared at Jiang Fengxing's purple-blue face and asked, "Was he in pain when he left?" "Very calm." Jiang Zhulu said. "Very sudden. He was not prepared at all. It was very short, in the time it took to say a word." Tears rolled down from the corners of Jiang Shangxin's eyes as she gritted her teeth and said, "Jiang Zhulu, aren't you afraid that I will kill you?" After wiping away the tear at the corner of Shangxin's eye, he walked past Jiang Zhulu with an ice-cold expression, as if nothing had happened. Jiang Zhulu stood rooted to the ground, feeling a chill run down his spine. It was only now that he truly understood how difficult and sad the situation he had fallen into was. Looking around, there was no one around. This was probably what Jiang Junling wanted to see. He wanted to be a lone wolf, just like what Fang Yan had said. He liked to live a simple, peaceful and poetic life, where he could see the golden sunlight and breathe in the fresh air the moment he opened his eyes. Therefore, this was the life that Fang Yan was living now. He would wake up at 6 in the morning and go to the garden downstairs to exercise. After an hour of exercise, he would go to the kitchen to wash the rice and cook a pot of millet porridge. Then, he would go upstairs to shower and change his clothes. After washing up, he would go downstairs to make breakfast. Fried eggs, slices of bread, vegetable salad, or fruit salad. Of course, this type of breakfast was too monotonous. Fang Yan preferred a bowl of millet porridge with a few plates of pickled vegetables. He would also be able to grab a fried dough stick or a big meat bun and stuff it into his mouth. After he was done with all this, it was time for Lu Chaoga to get out of bed. The two of them would sit together to eat and chat about some relaxing and pleasant topics. After eating, Fang Yan was responsible for washing the dishes, and then he changed his clothes to go to school. Originally, Lu Chaoga wanted Qi Ning to drive the GMC RV to send Fang Yan to the car, but Fang Yan felt that it was too high profile. A school security guard driving such a luxurious car, wouldn't that make the headlines? Fang Yan's security guard had said that he was a low-key man. Therefore, the low-key Fang Yan drove Lu Chaoga's white BMW to school. Of course, Fang Yan also knew that this was not good. Therefore, he did not go through the school's main gate, but entered through the small gate of the family compound that was specially open for the school teachers. After parking the car in the school's parking lot, he turned out and walked toward the school's gate. The work of the security guard was very tedious and simple. When students entered the school, they would check the students' appearance and discipline, whether they were wearing a tight fit, whether their skirts were too short, whether their hairstyles were too exaggerated and non-mainstream. Sometimes they would also check the students' school cards, and the names of the students who didn't bring their school cards would be recorded, and the homeroom teacher would come and pick them up. Of course, Fang Yen would not do this kind of thing. He sat in the security room, made a cup of fragrant tea, spread out a newspaper, roughly read the day's domestic and international news, and then walked around the school. If there were no gangsters or hooligans coming to cause trouble, or if there were internal fights, Fang Yen had almost nothing to do. Fang Yen was the most idle person in the entire Rosefinch Secondary. Zhang Chong, who stood at the door to check the students' discipline, poked Baldy's arm and said, "Director, isn't that what you should do?" The director of the security guard, Baldy, was full of bitterness, but his mouth was tough as he said, "As your leader, I naturally have to set an example. Suffer first, enjoy second. I'm a director, how can I compete with a young man for enjoyment? If I did that, would I have the status I have today? Don't learn from him, or else what future will you have in the future?" Zhang Chong curled his lips and said, "What future do we need? We're just waiting for a rich woman to come and take care of us." "Brat," Baldy patted Zhang Chong's head. Zhang Chong slipped away with a smile and ran to the security booth to help Fang Yen fill the teacup that he had just taken a few sips of. At 9 o'clock, the school's bell rang. Most of the students had already entered the classroom, and there were still a few who were late rushing over. After finishing his work, Baldy walked to the security booth and sat next to Fang Yen. He said with a smile, "Mr. Fang, how is Headmaster Lu?" "You mean Chowga?" "She's not old," Fang Yen said. I didn't mean that. Baldy's butt seemed to be on fire, and he began to fidget. "How can Headmaster Lu be old? In terms of age and appearance, she should be my sister. I'm talking about honorifics. Fang Yen looked at Baldy's appearance and thought that if Lu Chowga heard what he said, the head of the security department would probably be replaced on the spot. However, for the sake of their friendship, Fang Yen was still willing to help Baldy keep his position. "Are you nervous?" Fang Yen looked at Baldy with a smile and asked. Baldy wiped the sweat off his forehead and smiled. He looked at Fang Yen with a flattering expression and said, "You don't say, I'm a little nervous. You can't understand how prestigious Headmaster Lu is in our hearts. If she's not happy, I won't be able to keep my position. Do you know how old I am this year? I've been in Rosefinch High for most of my life, and I've only been promoted to a security captain. I'm ready to retire from this position. I can't just erase it because of one sentence. Wouldn't that be a big loss for me?" Fang Yen patted Baldy's shoulder and said with a smile, "Don't worry. No one is going to take your position as the security captain." "Really?" Baldy was overjoyed. He held Fang Yan's hand and said, "Are you saying this on behalf of Headmaster Lu?" "I'm only representing myself." Fang Yen pulled his hand back. There was a trace of disappointment on the Baldy's face as he said, "Then I feel much more at ease. Headmaster Lu is a good person. Although she hardly comes to school now, she's still the most respected old leader in my heart. If you say she's old, I'm afraid she really can't be the security captain anymore." Fang Yen said with a smile. Baldy quickly covered his mouth and said, Not old. Headmaster Lu isn't old at all." Then he pulled Fang Yan's hand and said, "Mr. Fang, let me treat you to lunch. There's a restaurant opposite the school that makes good pickled fish." "No need. I still have to go back to cook," Fang Yen said. Baldy's eyes were full of little stars. He said, "I really envy you. You must take care of Headmaster Lu's health so that she doesn't have to worry when she works. If you need any help, just let me know. I'll go through fire and water for you." Fang Yen smiled bitterly and said, "I'm just cooking a meal. There's no need for you to go through fire and water for me. Then I'll go make soup and light the fire. There's always a place where I'll be needed." Baldy persistently promoted himself. While the two were chatting, a girl wearing a heavy Rosefinch secondary uniform passed by their security booth. After the girl walked by, she quickly turned back. She knocked on the window and said with a smile, "Mr. Fang, we meet again." Fang Yen looked at the girl with delicate eyebrows and said with a smile, "Hello. We meet again. Do you remember who I am now?" The girl asked with a smile. "Su Chi," Fang Yen said. The girl's eyes lit up and said, I didn't expect Mr. Fong to remember. That's so nice. Fong Yen smiled faintly and said, I'll try my best to remember more students' names. Of course, I can't remember most of them. There are too many students in the school. I don't care, just remember my name, Su Chi said with a giggle. Mr. Fong, do you have time tonight? Chapter 486. Baldy's face was full of vigilance. He put his bald head in front of Fong Yen and said to Su Chi in an angry voice, Miss, if you have something to say, just come at me. Let go of Mr. Fong. Mr. Fong is very busy. Baldy was very angry. Baldy was very desperate. Was this society sick? How could little girls nowadays be so active? The social atmosphere was so good in the past. He had been sitting in front of the security booth for more than 10 years, and he had never experienced such an embarrassing thing. It was peaceful and steady, and he had never encountered such embarrassment and danger. Besides, with Baldy's keen eyes and extremely smart brain, how could he not know what the little devil in front of him was thinking? She wanted to hook up with Fong Yen. This was absolutely not allowed. Fong Yen was Principal Lu's. Fong Yen was his brother, and he was Principal Lu's man. Therefore, he was the brother of Principal Lu's man. As long as Fong Yen was there, he could be the head of security until he retired. If Fong Yen was seduced by some little goblin inside or outside the school, Principal Lu would be angry. Wouldn't he be the head of security on his head in minutes? Who asked him to be Fong Yan's brother? No, he absolutely couldn't let them get away with it. He couldn't even think about it, and he couldn't even try. Baldy had already decided, for the sake of his official hat. He was even willing to bear the humiliation and sacrifice his clean body. It was really hard to be a man these days. Baldy was very sad and angry, but his attitude was very firm. Unfortunately, there was no place for him to use his hot-bloodedness. Because Su Chi didn't look at him at all. From the beginning to the end, her eyes were fixed on Fong Yan's face that was too calm. I really want to know what you have experienced, Su Chi said with a smile. A normal man, when a little girl takes the initiative to pursue him, and it's a girl who is not too ugly, won't he more or less be secretly happy or moved? Why don't you have any strange emotions? Sitting there, he looked like a monk with 6 pure and unmoved hearts. Fong Yen looked at Su Chi with a warm smile on his lips and said, What you did, someone else has done it before, and she was braver than you. That day, the wind was gentle and the sun was bright. She wore a white shirt and a blue skirt. Her eyes were soft, but there was also a sense of ambition in them. She stood on the podium and said in a clear voice in front of the whole class, I want to be closer to you and see you more clearly. That day, it was drizzling and the ancient alley was quiet and secluded. She was wearing a white chong sam with floral patterns and holding an oil paper umbrella as she walked over. Her red high heels knocked on the stone pavement and also knocked on the man's heart. Over and over again until he was exhausted. She fell into Fong Yan's arms and said, I'm not a prop, I'm the female lead. The 10 feet abyss was attacked, and they were kidnapped. Their lives were in danger. When he was fighting with someone, a bullet was shot at the back of his heart. She used her thin and weak body to pounce on him. Her white shirt was stained with blood, but she smiled sweetly and said, I'm not as good as her, so I can only help you block the knife. The ingenious maintenance at the airport, the patient waiting in the wind and snow, the dozens of miles of walking in Yenjing City at night, the bowl of lamb stew noodles, and the parting words, I wanted to repay you before, but now I want to protect you. That kind of deep love that moved the heaven and earth, that kind of selfless sacrifice that penetrated deep into the bones, day after day, year after year, when did it ever stop? A smile that shocked the immortals, as ethereal as a god. Looking back once, can make a person immersed in it for a lifetime. Su Chi's appearance had no meaning to Fong Yen. If he had to find a meaning, it would be that he missed Qin Yitian very much. The person who hid his figure behind the scenes, but became the biggest support that supported Chao Yen and himself. Fong Yen was not a fool, nor was he an idiot. If it wasn't for the Qin family's support, how could the Jiang family still be helpless against him? If it wasn't for the close relationship between him and Qin Yitian, they could have used an even more extreme method to solve this transaction. Qin Yitian. Qin Yitian. No one was Qin Yitian. Only Qin Yitian was Qin Yitian. I don't have time. Fong Yen directly refused. These students were too dangerous. He didn't want to have too much interaction with them. I knew you would say that. Su Qi didn't care at all. She took out an envelope from her bag and said, Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin's Treading on Snow and Searching for Plum, classical music concert. I'm sure you wouldn't want to miss it, right? Feng Yan was stunned. Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin's concert? Those two girls came back to Huaqing? What? Baldy's eyes widened, and he said excitedly, You mean the Arasima group? Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin? They're going to hold a concert in Huaqing? How come I didn't know about this? Oh my god, they're famous stars from Huaqing. I really like them. Oh right, miss, is that their concert ticket in your hand? Seeing Feng Yan's slightly surprised expression, Su Qi thought Feng Yan was moved. She knew that going too far was as bad as not going far enough, so she wouldn't force him. Instead, she put the envelope on the table in front of Feng Yan, and said with a smile, This is a good location, let's go enjoy this musical feast together. Su Qi waved her hand and said, Goodbye, Mr. Feng. Then, she turned and walked towards the direction of the classroom. She walked slowly, and didn't care when the bell rang for a long time. When Su Qi was far away, Baldy's face was full of excitement, and his eyes were shining as he looked at Feng Yan, and said, Mr. Feng, I know you have something to do tonight, and someone needs to take care of Principal Lu, how about? Feng Yan looked at Baldy and said, Take it. Thank you, Mr. Feng. Baldy grabbed the concert ticket and shouted excitedly, That's great, I love Arasima so much. Those two beautiful girls, sitting there in ancient clothes, they make me forget all my worries, they're my idols. What do you think I should wear to meet them tonight? I did buy a suit during Chinese New Year, but the color is too dark, it makes me look too old. Feng Yan originally wanted to take Baldy to see the two little girls, Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin, but after seeing Baldy's performance, he gave up this irrational idea. This guy was really embarrassing. After Feng Yixing died in battle, Xia Xia took Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin to visit him at Swallow Dock. The two little girls accompanied Feng Yan at Swallow Dock for a long time, and they never left Feng Yan's mother, Lu Wan. Because the last time they came, Lu Wan also liked them the most, and treated them as her own daughters. Later, when they returned to the capital to study, they often went to Swallow Dock to visit Feng Yan. Later, they became busier and busier, and the number of times they came to visit Feng Yan also decreased. At that time, Feng Yan rarely spoke, and it was the two of them who surrounded Feng Yan and chatted. They said they learned Gu Zhang, they said they learned Sun, Pan Shao, and Gu Qin. They talked about who they had learned from, and which master had taught them. They said they participated in some program with Sister Xia Xia, and the live performance was very intense. They said they wanted to go out to practice, and Sister Xia Xia said she wanted to make a group for them. Even though Feng Yan had been mourning in Swallow Dock for 3 years, he still knew how popular the two little girls, Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin, were now. Feng Yan gave Su Qi's ticket to Baldy, but he still decided to come to see Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin's Looking for Plum in the Snow concert. He wanted to see their growth over the years, and see their glory tonight. They called him teacher, so he wanted to witness all kinds of beauty of his students. He came in a joyful mood. For many people, the tickets to the Arasima group's concert were hard to get. For the current Feng Yan, if he wanted a ticket to the concert, it was just a matter of saying a word. Feng Yan just mentioned it to Lu Chaoga, and Qining went out and brought back a stack of tickets. Lu Chaoga's injury had not recovered, and she was not willing to come out to participate in such activities. She also wanted to talk to Feng Yan and his students. Feng Yan could only come alone. He held the thick stack of concert tickets and didn't know who to give it to. Feng Yan drove the car to the venue of the concert, Tianhe Music Hall. As the car approached Tianhe City, he saw a large number of fans in Hanfu or Cheongsam rushing towards the direction of the music hall. Most of them were very young, and their faces were full of excitement and joy. Feng Yan had just seen such an expression on Baldy's face. Some people said that classical music was too niche. Except for a small number of fans, it was difficult to walk into the ordinary people, and it was difficult to walk into the hearts of young people. But now Feng Yan understood that it was not that classical music was too niche, but that it had not encountered really good music. It was not difficult to walk into the hearts of young people, but you had to find a way to make young people like you and accept you. Feng Yan saw the success of Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin from the eyes of those young people, and saw the success of classical music. He also saw the success of Summer. That superstar-like figure, when she stood at the peak of Hua Xia's music, still shouldered a more important responsibility and mission. She wanted to lead Huaxia classical music to stand at the peak of world music. Such a beautiful thing, such a magical treasure, she should not be annihilated in the long river of history, but should bloom with a more dazzling brilliance. Jiangqin, I love you. Yuan Lin, it's you. Arasima, I love you Arasima, my heart. The fan group held the love banners of the Arasima group and the ancient costumes of Jiangqin and Yuan Lin, and shouted from time to time. Fang Yan smiled, parked the car in the parking lot, and walked towards the VIP passage of the music hall. At this moment, a beautiful little girl blocked in front of Fang Yan. Chapter 487. The girl looked young, but she had heavy makeup on and was wearing a sexy short skirt that did not match her image at all. The girl stood in front of Fang Yan and asked with a sweet voice, "Uncle, are you also here to see the Arasima concert?" Fang Yan nodded and looked at the girl with a puzzled expression. "Do we know each other?" The girl giggled and extended her hand to Fang Yan. "We didn't know each other before, but can't we get to know each other now? My name is Lu Yi. How should I address Uncle?" Fang Yan was sure he didn't know this girl, so he didn't shake hands with her. He looked at the girl and asked, "What's the matter?" The girl's expression suddenly became resentful. She stomped her feet and said, "Uncle, why are you so annoying? I just want to get to know you. I've already extended my hand, but you don't even shake hands with me. I asked for your name, but you don't say it. Are you a gentleman? You don't know how to be kind to the fairer sex." Fang Yan looked at the girl and went around her to check the tickets. "This person is sick." "Hey, Uncle!" Louis once again blocked in front of Fang Yan with a very professional smile on her face. "Uncle, I saw you came to see the Arasima concert alone. Don't you think it's boring without a female companion? I'll go in with you, okay?" Fang Yan looked at the girl and shook his head. "Thank you. I'm fine by myself." "Uncle!" the girl shouted coquettishly. Seeing that Fang Yan wanted to leave, she grabbed Fang Yan's arm and said, "Can you take me in? I also want to see the Arasima concert. Let's go watch the concert first, then go out for supper, okay?" Fang Yan thought for a bit and stopped to look at the girl in front of him. "Which school are you from?" Fang Yan asked. Lu Yi's eyes looked away in panic and said, "Uncle, why are you asking me which school I'm from? Don't you like students? Don't all the uncles nowadays like to date students?" "I'm asking you which school are you from?" Fang Yan raised his voice and said with a stern expression. Lu Yi's body trembled. She didn't dare to refuse Fang Yan's question. She said softly, "I'm from the Huaqing Music Academy. Because I like the classical music of the Arasima so much, I wanted to follow you in to have a look. If the one you met today wasn't me, but any other man, you would have begged to go in with them, wouldn't you?" Fang Yan asked coldly. "That's not it," Lu Yi explained in a low voice. "I've been standing here for a long time. Those who can enter the VIP passage are all wealthy people. In their eyes, a ticket isn't worth much. I'm not the kind of man who would beg for a ticket. I'm looking for a man who is pleasing to the eye and comes alone. Such a man generally won't reject a female companion. And then go for supper." Fang Yan looked at the girl's thick eyeshadow and asked aloud. With a shy expression, Louis said, "Uncle, don't misunderstand. I only said to go for supper, I don't mean anything else. If you don't mean anything else, then do the men around you also don't?" Fang Yan asked in return. "I think it's okay. Rich people still have manners." Fang Yan sneered and said, "That's because you haven't seen rich people without manners. It doesn't feel good to be interrogated like this, right?" Fang Yan asked aloud. "Yes," Lu Yi said in a low voice. "You didn't expect to meet a man like me? They would either agree or directly refuse. Because you're trading yourself as a commodity. Who would talk nicely to a commodity? Who would pay any attention to a commodity? There's nothing in this world that comes without sowing. If you want to gain something, you have to pay something. You want a ticket to watch the Arasima concert, so you have to pay with your dignity or something more important. Because you're a commodity, you don't have the right to bargain." "Uncle, I'm not going in with you. I'm going back to school right now," Lu Yi said with red eyes. She wanted to leave. Fang Yan's words were so harsh that she felt like they were piercing her heart. "Wait," Fang Yan called out. Lu Yi turned around to look at Fang Yan and asked, "Uncle, is there anything else?" "You're from Huaqing?" Fang Yan asked. From the girl's voice, he could tell she had a Huaqing accent. Yes. My family is from Huaching, but our family's financial situation isn't very good, Lu Yi said with a wronged voice. Because your family's financial situation isn't very good, you want to take a shortcut? Call your parents, Feng Yan said. What? Tell them you want to invite them to the Arasima concert. But do as I say. But, don't make me repeat myself, Feng Yan said with a straight face. It's a waste of my saliva, they'll think I'm trying to convince them. Lu Yi didn't ask anymore, took out her phone from her pocket and dialed her mother's number. After Lu Yi hung up, Feng Yan took out 3 extra tickets from his pocket and gave them to her, saying, if you don't know how to love yourself, you'll never have self-respect. Accompany your parents to a concert, look at their faces, think about what they've done for you. Saying so, Feng Yan turned around and walked towards the VIP ticket counter. Uncle, your name? Feng Yan waved his hand and quickly disappeared from Lu Yi's sight. When Lu Yi's parents arrived, they saw their daughter sitting on the steps of the concert hall in a daze. Their clothes were simple. Their faces were deeply wrinkled. Just like countless ordinary parents of ordinary children. This was what real life was like. Lu Yi's mother pulled her daughter up from the ground, patted the dust off her dress and said, Silly girl, why are you sitting on the ground? It's cold on the ground, it's not good for a girl's body. What if you freeze? Lu Yi's father smiled, looked at the huge and luxurious building complex in front of him and said with some hesitation, Xiao Tao, why did you want to invite Mom and Dad to listen to this? I said no, but your mom insisted that we come to see. How much does it cost? How about you and your mom go in, and I won't go in? I'll take a few laps by the river, and when you're done, we'll go back together. Lu Yi held back her tears, held her mother's hand and said with a smile, It's free, this ticket is a gift from someone. You and my mom go in, I won't go in. That won't do. Or you and your mom go in, Dad, Lu Yi cried and said, Just listen to me this time. You go in with my mom. I'll wait for you outside. We'll go home together later. Okay. I'll go in with your mom. Lu Yi's father saw his daughter crying and panicked, and quickly said, Don't cry. I'll go in, okay? Dad, thank you. Lu Yi put the 2 tickets in her hand into her father's hand and said, You guys go in quickly. The concert is about to start. You're in the VIP lounge. If you can't find a seat, ask the staff to take you in. Dad knows. This child, why did she start crying? Lu Yi stood still, watching her parents walk into the concert hall one after another. She gave the remaining ticket in her hand to a girl who was looking for a target and said in a low voice, If you don't know how to love yourself, you'll never have self-esteem. After saying that, she walked down the stairs. She will come in, rely on her own efforts to get in. Not in such a humiliating and cowardly way. In the backstage dressing room of the concert hall, countless staff members were busy nervously and orderly. This wasn't the first concert of the Arasima group, but it was the most important concert of the Arasima group. Because Huaching was the hometown of the 2 members of the Arasima group, their advertising slogan was also, Homecoming Journey. The girls who had been popular for the past 2 years were going to show their talent in front of their parents, their neighbors, their teachers, and their friends, and accept their judgment. The significance of this event was extraordinary. If the media in Huaching were to scold or criticize after the performance, what would happen to Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin? How would they, the team members, deal with this? Therefore, everyone was very serious, striving to make every detail perfect. The most relaxed should be the 2 people involved, Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin. They were sitting in front of the dressing table, doing their hair. Lin, are uncle and auntie here today? Jiang Qin, who was happily eating a box of strawberries, asked. They're here. Yuan Lin answered without looking up. I've already reserved the best seats for them. How could they not come when their precious daughter is playing in front of their house? Not only did they come, but they also paid for the tickets out of their own pockets. They even invited our family's aunts and relatives who couldn't be further away. Now do you understand why our Huaching's tickets sell out so quickly? Because our old man booked the whole place. I don't believe it. Jiang Qin said with a smile. Our other tickets are also selling very well. Did your family book the whole place at that time? But my parents are here today, and they invited a lot of relatives to come and support. They've probably met and chatted by now? I really want to go and chat with them. Yes. My mom's physique has a tendency to grow. I told her to be careful, but she said she's fat now because she's relaxed. She even said that I'm biased. Why can my dad be fat but not her? Your mom is so interesting. I miss the braised pork trotter she made. I miss it too, Jiangqin said. Her thoughts drifted far away and she said, Mr. Fong returned to watching. I know. I wanted to send him an invitation. I thought about it too. But, I'm afraid he hasn't gotten over it yet. Why should I make things difficult for him? He's been through too much these years. We met Sister Xia Tian because of Mr. Fong, and it's because of Mr. Fong that we embarked on this path, Yuan Lin said with a sigh. Her gaze finally shifted away from the mobile game. If only Mr. Fong could come to our concert, that would be great. Yes. The strawberry in Jiangqin's mouth suddenly became tasteless. She threw the strawberry box on the dressing table with some annoyance and said, If only Mr. Fong came to our concert, that would be great. I really hope Mr. Fong could come. Chapter 488. Fong Yan's seat was on the second floor of the music hall, which was a small, independent box. These private rooms were specially prepared for celebrities, and dignitaries who did not want to be seen by the outside world. The reservation fee for each private room was very expensive. The box was separated by walls on both sides, and the outer layer was guarded by a wooden door. Only the direction facing the stage was empty. You could sit in the seats and enjoy the show, or stand up and lean on the railing to enjoy the performance at a closer distance. If you were well prepared in advance, you could even open a bottle of red wine or brandy and savor it with your family and friends. There were other boxes on both sides of the box, but no one needed to greet each other. Fong Yan looked at the seat. This was a small room for 4 people, and he might meet Lu Yi and her parents later. The concert hadn't started yet, but the audience was already full. The sound of mountains and seas could be heard from time to time, and the names of Jiangqin, Yuan Lin, and Arasima resounded in his ears. It seemed that these 2 little girls were really prosperous, and their careers were developing very fast. Fong Yan sat alone for a while, and a pair of old people with vicissitudes of life walked in timidly. They saw that there were already people in the box, so they stood at the door and didn't dare to come in. But they knew that this was their seat, and they didn't want to leave. For a moment, they didn't know what to do. Fong Yan grinned and took the initiative to greet them and said, Are you Lu Yi's parents? Yes, we are, Lu Yi's father said. On such an occasion, although he was also very nervous, it was still necessary to stand up and greet them. Your seat is here. Come in, Fong Yan said with a smile. Lu Yi's parents came in and sat on the 2 sofas farthest from Fong Yan. Although they couldn't be too far from Fong Yan. In their hearts, those who could watch the performance in such a place must be famous people. They had no experience in dealing with such people, and they didn't know what to say. However, it was also rude not to say anything. Lu Yi's father looked at Fong Yan and said, Sir, did you give Lu Yi the concert tickets? Fong Yan nodded and said, Yes. You are. Lu Yi's parents looked at each other and began to guess Fong Yan's identity. For all the parents in the world, any strange man around their daughter was dangerous. I am Lu Yi's teacher, Fong Yan said with a smile. He was indeed Lu Yi's teacher. He taught her how to win the respect of others. He taught her how to be a person. What Fong Yan didn't expect was that Lu Yi didn't accompany her parents. It seemed that this girl was more sensitive and proud than he had imagined. If she had really changed, then these 2 tickets to the concert were too valuable. It might be worth more than the value of the whole concert. I happened to have extra tickets on hand. I saw Lu Yi at the entrance of the concert hall, so I gave her the ticket. So its teacher, Lu Yi's parents' hearts that were hanging in their throats suddenly fell to the ground. The 2 of them clasped their hands tightly. There was a kind of relief after the lingering fear. Hello, teacher. It's good to be a teacher. Are you teaching music at the Academy of Music? Fong Yan smiled and didn't answer their question. He said, I thought she would come in with her classmates. I didn't expect her to give the tickets to you. Lu Yi is a filial child. Lu Yi's parents' faces were full of joy. Lu Yi's mother finally couldn't help but open her mouth and said, Our Tao Tao has been sensible since she was young. There is only 1 apple at home, but she knows to divide it into 3 parts. She gives the biggest part to Dad, saying that Dad works hard. The second biggest part is for me, saying that it's hard for me to cook every day. She eats the smallest part. It's because our family's condition isn't good that the child has suffered with us. The greatest gift is giving. You give her everything you have. How can she suffer? Fong Yen comforted them with a smile. You see, now that she's grown up, doesn't she know how to repay kindness? Yes. This child, Lu Yi's father couldn't stop smiling. He said, I said I didn't understand this and let her and her mother come in, but she didn't agree. She still has a great youth, and there are plenty of opportunities to enjoy in the future. She hopes to give you what she thinks is the best, so that you two old people can enjoy it. Fong Yen echoed the pride in their words and said, The concert is about to begin. I won't bother you two anymore. If you need anything, you can tell me. Fong Yen could see the restraint in their words and the inferiority in their bones. Every word Fong Yen said to them was like a punishment. At this time, the best way was to let them keep silent and seriously enjoy the next performance. Yes, yes, Lu Yi's father said while rubbing his hands. He wanted to step forward and shake hands with Fong Yen, but he felt that it was a little inappropriate to do so. In order not to make them nervous, Fong Yen deliberately walked to the edge of the railing of the box and stood there. He planned to stand and listen to the concert. Young Master Fu, let me tell you, these two little girls are still very young. Not only are they pretty, their skin is so fresh and juicy. You can even pinch them and water will come out. Aren't you tired of playing with that little girl from before? Do you want to change the goods? I know you like this kind of girl. A frivolous and greasy man's voice came from the railing of the box next door. What? Liang Dechong, what kind of unorthodox methods do you have? A gloomy voice said jokingly. Hey, as long as young Master Fu agrees, I'll settle these two girls for you tonight. What? Which star comes to our Huaqing to visit? Won't they give us a taste of sweetness? Didn't they say that these two girls have a strong background? They've been in the industry for several years, and no one dares to have any ideas about them? What background can they have? Isn't it just because she calls Xia Tian's sister? There are so many artists in Xia Tian's company. Can she take care of them all? Besides, let alone Xia Tian's sister, even if Xia Tian comes personally, as long as young Master Fu says the word, I can also think of a way to get rid of her. Bool **T Heavenly King and Queen. That's what those little brats call them. We won't put them in our eyes if we want to play, it'll be 2 kings and 1 queen. The conversation continued, but Fong Yan's expression was as cold as frost. When Xia Tian wanted to bring Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin into the entertainment industry, Fong Yan was worried that something like this would happen. But Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin both liked it, and the fact that they wanted to promote classical music was indeed praiseworthy. After vaguely knowing some of Xia Tian's background, he thought that there wouldn't be any blind guy in Huaxia who would have ideas about Xia Tian or Xia Tian's disciple. Therefore, Fong Yan finally relented and helped Xia Tian convince Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin's family. From the conversation between Liang Dechong and young Master Fu, Fong Yan also heard that Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin had been having a smooth life these years. With Xia Tian's protection, no one dared to touch them. However, they weren't afraid of those with a high level, but they were afraid of those with a low vision. Those who knew Xia Tian's identity wouldn't touch Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin, but people like Liang Dechong and young Master Fu, who didn't know Xia Tian's background, were likely to use dangerous methods to force the two girls to submit. Fong Yan was about to make a move when suddenly there was an earth-shattering uproar below the stage. Jiang Qin, I love you. Yuan Lin, fate comes to you. Arasima. The stage, which was pitch black just a moment ago, was suddenly lit up. The concert had officially begun. The place where the stage was originally located had become a fairyland filled with wind and snow. It wasn't the background of an electronic screen, but a real man-made scenery. Snowflakes danced in the sky, and winter-sweet flowers bloomed. There was a bamboo pavilion in the middle of the plum blossoms, and 2 girls in white and cyan palace dresses were laughing and playing in the pavilion. From time to time, there would be laughter that sounded like silver bells, and people couldn't help but curl up the corners of their lips. The scenery was fairyland, and the people were immortals. The immortals and fairyland complemented each other. The performance hadn't even started, but the visual effect presented by the Arasima team was already refreshing. I'm not playing anymore, I'm bored to death. The Cyan Fairy sat on the stone chair in the bamboo pavilion, threw the red embroidered ball in her hand into the snow, and said in a tired voice. The voice spread through the speakers, and Fong Yan could tell that it was Yuan Lin's voice. Sister, let's make a song? The White Fairy walked to the opposite side of the Cyan Fairy and said softly. This was Jiang Qin's voice. Make a song? What song? The Cyan Fairy was very tempted by her big sister's suggestion and asked with a smile. The White Fairy pointed at the scenery around them and said, "We're here to admire the snow and flowers, so this song naturally has to be related to the white snow and the plum blossoms. How about we call this song, Looking for Plum Blossoms in the Snow?" Sure. Then let's play out what we're feeling right now, and call the song, Looking for Plum Blossoms in the Snow? Wonderful! And so, the Cyan Fairy took out a long flute from her waist, put it to her lips, and began to play it. The sound of the flute was ethereal and intoxicating. The White Fairy sat on the stone chair, reaching out her slender hand to play with a phoenix tail gouging on the table. The sound was clear, like a mountain spring. The sound of the gouging and gouging was very pleasing to the ear. And the best part was the combination of the flute and the gouging. One was long and distant, the other lively and powerful. Two different instruments, two different girls. The combination was enough to make people go crazy. Fang Yen gripped the railing tightly, and looked at the two girls who were performing seriously in the snow and plum blossoms forest with a face full of joy. These were his students, and he was very proud of their achievements today. Just like Lu Yi's parents, because their daughter gave the biggest piece of an apple to her parents, they had always remembered it for more than 10 years. He wanted to tell everyone in the world that they were his students. Young Master Fu, look. Do you feel anything? Do you feel anything? I'll book them and let them wear this palace dress when we're working. Chapter 489. Su Qi's private room was on the 3rd floor, directly facing the center of the stage. Sitting in this position, she could look down at the performance on the stage, belonging to the VIP of the VIPs. It was also the most expensive and prestigious position in the entire music hall. It was said that these seats were given to some very important people at the beginning. When Fang Yen asked for a ticket, even with Lu Chaoga's connections in Huaqing, he could only get a VIP room on the 2nd floor. Su Qi's private room was also for 4 people, but she was the only one who came to watch the concert. It could be seen that Su Qi had put on a lot of effort for this concert. She took off the Vermilion Bird Middle School sky blue uniform and changed into a long white dress with floral patterns, a pair of light blue, deep-waisted canvas shoes, and a small floral hat on her head. She looked delicate and fashionable. She didn't use too many accessories, and she didn't put on too much makeup. Because she knew better than anyone that a girl's most powerful weapon was youth. A girl's feelings were always poetry, and she was at the age of poetry. Su Qi sat in her seat and waited patiently, but the man still didn't show up until the concert began. She wanted to call Fang Yen to ask, but she found that she didn't have that man's number. Is this love? Su Qi thought, resting her chin on her hand. She actually fell in love with a school security guard? If this kind of thing was known by her classmates or her group of friends, they would definitely laugh at her, right? But who cares? Right. He said that what he was doing had been done before, and it was done by someone more courageous than her. Who was that girl? Was she also a student? What an enchanting and charming uncle. Clang. The private room door was pushed open with great force. Su Qi's heart suddenly stopped, and she turned around with a face full of surprise. Then the smile on her face froze. Baldy, dressed in a navy blue suit, stood at the door, sweating profusely. He looked at the girl and kept apologizing. I'm sorry. There's a concert tonight, so there's a traffic jam. When I got there, I couldn't find a place to park. I drove around the concert hall a few times and finally stopped in front of the store across the road. Suki did not hear what Baldy said. She only cared about one thing. Why are you here? That's me. Baldy looked at the girl in confusion and said seriously. Why you? Why not me? What about him? Oh, you mean Fang Yen? He's not free. He's not free. Su Qi's heart suddenly ached. He didn't have time. This reason really hurt his pride. Baldy walked over to Su Qi and sat down beside her. Don't be sad, he said. Fang Yen was very busy. When he got back, he still had to cook for the old principal. Didn't you want someone to watch the concert with you? It's the same if I accompany you. Just like you, I'm also a hardcore fan of Arasima. Baldy waved his hands in the air and shouted the slogan of Arasima's fans. Star, star, I love you. Star, star. We'll be together forever. Yeah, I'm not bragging. When it comes to appreciating classical music, I'm better than Fang Yen. It's different, Suki said. What's different? You're not good looking. Baldy opened his mouth again and again. He didn't know how to refute. In the private room on the second floor, such a tragedy happened. What a masterpiece. A gloomy man's voice sounded. Beauty is the most beautiful. Beauty is pleasing to the eye. Beauty that can cause the downfall of a country will shock the world. They're not twins, but they're better than twins. Liang Dachong, my happy life is in your hands. Young Master Fu, it's a small matter. You've come from afar and our watching has nothing to entertain you except some cheap seafood. Coincidentally, these two girls are watching specialties. Why don't you go through the trouble of appraising them and see if they taste good? Haha, it's no problem. I'm willing to do this. Young Master Fu laughed heartily. Dachong is not bad. You're loyal. From now on, you'll be my good brother. Fong Yan's good mood disappeared. He used a bit of strength and grabbed a wooden plank from the wooden railing in front of him. He threw it in the direction of the voice coming from the private room next door. Ah! Someone screamed. Who threw it at me? Who the hell threw it at me? Someone roared angrily. It was Liang Dachong, the pimp who wanted to introduce Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin to young Master Fu. Young Master Liang, what's wrong? What happened? Blood. Young Master Liang, your head is bleeding. The private room next door was in chaos. Damn it, search them row by row. I want to see who dares to go against me, Liang Dachong shouted hysterically. Dachong, don't be rash. There are too many people here, don't blow things up. Young Master Fu comforted him. If things get out of hand, we won't be able to do anything. Liang Dachong seemed to be extremely afraid of this young Master Fu. Although he was still cursing, he could only suppress his anger for the time being. He also knew that if he asked his men to search the private rooms row by row, he would offend all the guests in the VIP rooms on the second and third floor. If the commotion was too big, the concert would be messed up by him. By then, everyone's attention would be on him. Even if he wasn't afraid, there was no need for him and his old man to be on the headlines, right? Damn unlucky. Liang Dachong cursed angrily. If I find out which bastard did this, I'll skin him alive. A cold murderous intent appeared in Fong Yan's eyes. If it wasn't for the sake of the concert going on normally, that piece of wood would have crippled someone or directly smashed their skull, killing them. If he hadn't shown mercy, did he think he would still have the chance to speak? That attack was just a small punishment. It had to be said that this was a high-standard concert. Fong Yan had heard Music Addict, one of the 7 addicts of Huaxia, perform classical music live at the Maple Leaf Club. That kind of breathing could move people's emotions, and it made people's minds have endless associations. Along with the joy of the music, joy of joy, sorrow of sorrow. Deep down, tears streamed down one's face. With Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin's current attainments, they naturally couldn't be compared to Music Addict. They were too young and had too little experience, so they couldn't perform a silent and sorrowful movement. But they took a different path. Since they couldn't perform sad music, then it had nothing to do with sadness. They just wanted to pass on happiness. Therefore, in their music, one could feel the wind singing, see the snowflakes dancing, and experience the magical process of plum trees growing and blooming quietly. They were 2 fairies who descended from heaven, chasing and playing in the snowflakes, happy and carefree. Clear joy and refreshing laughter spread along the way. One didn't need to think too much, and one didn't need to do much. One just needed to enjoy and laugh with them all the way. This was the feeling that Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin brought to the audience, and it was also the feeling that they brought to Fong Yan. Fong Yan thought that their choice back then was right, and their efforts were worth it. He liked this kind of music, and Huaxia also needed this kind of music. It's so beautiful. Lu Yi's father praised and said enviously, if our Tao Tao could be like this in the future, how great would that be? It definitely can. Our daughter is so beautiful, and she studies so hard. Teacher, don't you think so? Lu Yi's mother looked at Fong Yan expectantly and asked. They didn't understand music, but they simply believed in their daughter's excellence. This kind of belief was very firm, but also so lacking in confidence. So they hoped that there would be a professional who could give them some comments. It definitely can. Fong Yan turned around and smiled. As long as she continues to work hard. Thank you, teacher. Thank you, teacher. After Lu Yi's parents heard this simple and even exaggerated comment from Fong Yan, their faces flushed with excitement and they kept saying thank you. Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin performed Treading on the Snow to Find Plum Blossoms, 3 Lives, 3 Worlds, Greeting the Lord, and also sang several ancient songs on the stage. One of the songs was called Swallow Dock. The green bricks and gray tiles were their deepest concern. The affectionate and moving melody, the familiar and touching lyrics, made Fang Yan unable to extricate himself. This song was written and composed by Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin. Before they sang, they said that they wanted to give this song to their teacher, their best friend, a very special person to them. Fang Yan knew that the person they were talking about was him. When he cared about them, they didn't forget him. At the end of the concert, the venue that had been quiet became noisy again. The fans who had just woken up from one classical feast after another were unwilling to leave. They shouted the names of Jiang Qin, Yuan Lin, and Arasima over and over again, and shouted encore again and again. Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin were also unwilling to leave. The two of them stood in the center of the stage with a microphone and bowed deeply to the audience below the stage. "We don't want to leave either." Jiang Qin raised the microphone and said, "It seems like it has just started. Why is it over already? Huaqing is our hometown, and you are our family." Yuan Lin said in a sweet voice. Before preparing for the concert in Huaqing, the staff were very nervous. They were worried that we would make mistakes and let our relatives in our hometown laugh at us. But Honey and I don't feel nervous at all. Because you are our family. Even if we don't perform well, you will definitely forgive us. Who would be too harsh on their relatives? The applause below the stage was like thunder, accompanied by happy laughter. Chapter 490. Our parents are in Huaqing. Our family and friends are in Huaqing. We were born in Huaqing, grew up in Huaqing, and went to primary and secondary school in Huaqing. We met a very important man in our lives in Huaqing. Jiang Qin said sadly. There was a moment of silence, and then there was a tsunami of exclamations. "Sweetheart, who is that man? Who is that man? Sweetheart, are you guys in love? Please don't. Goddess, you've broken my heart. Who is that man?" Wang Ku, the manager of Arasima backstage, was really anxious. He grabbed the shoulders of the staff next to him and shouted, "What are they talking about? What are they talking about? Ask her to stop." No one asked Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin to stop, because Xia Xia said that they were completely free on the stage. When they stood on the stage was theirs. Yuan Lin looked at Jiang Qin with a surprised expression. She didn't expect Jiang Qin to say that at this time. Jiang Qin's voice was a little sad. He said, "I don't mean to say it on purpose. It's just that when I return to this city, I can't help but smell his scent. You must not know that the reason why Yuan Lin and I took this path, the reason why we were able to stand on the stage of classical music, and the reason why we worked hard for such a goal, is also greatly related to him. I don't know if he came to our concert. Maybe he didn't. But I know he is in Huaqing, so I feel very at ease." The fans below the stage were even more crazy. They kept shouting Jiang Qin's name and asked Jiang Qin who the man was. "He is my teacher," Jiang Qin said with a sly smile. "A teacher who influenced my life." Near the front of the stage, Sister Li looked at her daughter's expression and sighed deeply. Zhang Dehai held his wife's chubby hand and said, "The child has grown up and has her own ideas. Let her be." "I know," Sister Li said with some annoyance. "I'm not against Qin Qin and Fang Yan being together. Honey was now an adult, and she had the right to choose her own life. What I'm worried about is, where is Fang Yan now? I haven't seen him for a few years. I called my daughter to ask, but she didn't say anything. I don't know what happened. Fang Yan is a good kid." Zhang Dehai looked at Sister Li with a puzzled expression and said, "Didn't you dislike Fang Yan before? You even chased her out for no reason. Why did you change your attitude now?" "What do you know?" Auntie Li said angrily. "I didn't like Fang Yan in the past because she was still young. We couldn't let her be with Fang Yan. Now that our dear one has grown up, why can't he treat our dear one well? Look at Honey's pitiful face. You weren't this sad when I rejected you when you confessed to me, right?" Cough, cough, cough. Zhang Dehai coughed violently. The topic of his wife was too explosive, and he couldn't take it anymore. "I really envy you guys," Jiang Qin said with a smile. "You guys can live in the same city as him, look at the same sky, breathe the same air, But I have to fly around every day, and the time I can stay in Huaqing is too little. If you see him, you must say hello to me. Say hello to Mr. Fong. Jiang Qin said she misses you. Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin bowed to the audience below the stage again, and they left amidst the reluctance and shouts of the audience below the stage. Fong Yan didn't expect that there would be such a scene at the end of the concert. Jiang Qin, this fearless girl, was really capable of doing anything. But in this way, wouldn't he be in the headlines tomorrow? Fong Yan completely believed in the paparazzi's sense of smell and ability. Jiang Qin said the words Mr. Fong, and Jiang Qin had been in a scandal with him before she became famous. At that time, it even became negative news in the newspapers. As long as those people had the intention to find out, they would definitely be able to find these clues. Fong Yan just wanted to be a quiet little security guard. The concert ended and the crowd began to disperse. Lu Yi's parents stood up and looked at Fong Yan. They wanted to say something but didn't know what to say. Fong Yan took the initiative to walk over and shook hands with Lu Yi's father. He said with a smile, "Take care of yourself." "Thank you, teacher." "Thank you." Lu Yi's father thanked him profusely. "You have a good daughter." Fong Yan said with a smile, turned around and walked out of the private room. He went to the private room next door, ready to talk to Liang Dachong and young Master Fu about professional issues such as the sense of music and the multiple forms of expression of classical music, but found that there was no one inside. They left early. Fong Yan's eyes turned cold and he quickly walked downstairs. Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin retreated backstage. Yuan Lin took Jiang Qin's hand and said, "Sweetheart, why did you say it in front of so many people? Aren't you afraid?" All of a sudden I felt something. Jiang Qin was a little depressed and said in a low voice, "We have worked so hard and risked our lives for the past few years. We want to show him our best side. We want him to know our talent and let him recognize our excellence. But when we have the opportunity to stand in the center of the stage and have the ability to prove ourselves to him, he doesn't know where he went. So what if today's concert is a success? I still feel empty in my heart. Lin, even if we do it, even if we really bring classical music to the world stage, but what's the point of that for me?" Sigh. Yuan Lin sighed softly. "Let's go see Mr. Fong tomorrow. We'll treat him to a meal, treat him to a drink, even if we don't do anything. We'll just watch him quietly and accompany him." "Okay," Jiang Qin said with red eyes. "We'll go see him tomorrow. Wherever he goes, we'll go there. We'll pay for his meals and pour for his drinks. He doesn't say anything and does nothing. We'll just sit beside him and say nothing and do nothing. Just like when we were in Swallow Dock." The two girls made such an agreement, and their moods became cheerful again. Wang Ke walked over and hugged the two girls of Arasima warmly. She said with a smile, "Sweetheart, Lin, congratulations. Today's performance was amazing. The whole Huaqing will be proud of you." "Thank you," Yuan Lin said with a smile. "If only there wasn't a last performance," Wang Ke said. This was a subtle reminder and a warning. Jiang Qin said softly, "Sister Wang, I'm sorry for making things difficult for you." "Haha, it's okay," Wang Ke said with a smile. "What's there to make things difficult for? Isn't it my job? I just want to talk to him," Jiang Qin said. "I think he'll definitely hear it in this way." Wang Ke didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She said, "My lady, not only Mr. Fong heard it. The whole Huaqing heard it. Just wait and see. Tomorrow morning, all the newspapers in Huaqing will be filled with news about you. I don't care. Sister Xia Tian said before, don't care about what the outside world thinks. We just need to focus on our own music." "Yes. Don't worry about it. You just need to focus on your music. Don't you have Sister Wang to do the rest? If Sister Wang can't do it well, there's still President Xia, right? Am I right?" At this moment, a group of people walked toward the dressing room backstage. The security guards went forward to stop them. The leader, a man with a buzz cut, slapped them in the face and scolded, "Are you blind? Even I can't go in?" The security guard was slapped in the face. When he was about to fight back, the two bodyguards in black behind the man with the brush cut rushed over. One on the left and the other on the right, they rushed into the crowd and knocked down the security guards who were in charge of guarding the place. Clang! The man with a buzz cut pushed open the door of the dressing room and saw Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin chatting inside. He couldn't help but be amused. He turned around and said to the man with glasses behind him, "Young Master Fu, it seems that you have good luck with women today." I was worried that they would run away. If that was the case, it would take some time. Now they are still here. Shall we talk to them now? Fu Lei adjusted the glasses on the bridge of his nose and said with a smile, "Be polite." "Hey, got it," Liang Dachong said with a smile. He walked up to Wang Ku, took out a business card from his pocket and handed it over. He said, "I'm Liang Dachong, the chairman of the Dachong Group. You can easily find out what I do as long as you go out and ask around." Wang Ku usually had Xia Tian's support, so she really didn't take Liang Dachong seriously. She stood in front of Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin with her slightly plump body and said with a smile, "Young Master Liang, why have so many of you barged in? What business do you have?" Liang Dachong pointed at Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin and asked, "Are you their agent?" "Yes, Wang Ku." "Good. Wang Ku, let's discuss something. I have a distinguished guest who came from afar and likes watching their show. I want to take them out for a midnight snack. Why don't you name a price?" Wang Ku smiled coldly and said, "Young Master Liang, I'm afraid I can't agree to this. Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin have worked hard for most of the night and are very tired now. They just said that they wanted to go back to sleep. Why don't we find another opportunity?" Slap. Wang Ku was also slapped in the face. Liang Dachong pointed at Wang Ku and shouted, "Who do you think you are? Don't be shameless. I've already said it today. If you agree, I'll take them. If you don't agree, I'll still take them. I want to see what you can do to me." Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin hurried forward to support Wang Ku to prevent her from falling to the ground. Jiang Qin took a step forward and said, "You can go. We won't go out with you for a midnight snack." "Little girl, this kind of thing is not up to you to decide." Liang Dachong laughed arrogantly. "The people that I, Liang Dachong, want to take care of have never failed." This sentence is very imposing. I like it. A thin man stood at the door and said with a smile, "I'm the same as you. The people I want to hit have never failed." Chapter 491. Hearing that familiar voice, Jiang Qin was stunned for a moment. She thought that it was her illusion. Just like the countless previous experiences, she would hear Feng Yan's voice when she was in danger. She would hear Feng Yan's voice when she was tired from playing the piano. She would hear Feng Yan's voice when she was shopping alone while drinking tea. And she would hear Feng Yan's voice when she woke up from her dreams. Could it be the same as those mistakes, another beautiful illusion? Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin looked over with a puzzled expression. When they found that the thin man standing at the door was indeed the Feng Yan that they were thinking about, their faces immediately bloomed with a moving smile. Mr. Feng came. Mr. Feng really came. Mr. Feng came to enjoy their concert. Mr. Feng listened to their singing and watched their performance. Mr. Feng knew about Jiang Qin's confession on stage and the deep-rooted longing. Mr. Feng. Jiang Qin was shy and happy at the same time. Her eyes were red as she shouted Feng Yan's name. "Mr. Feng, you're here." Yuan Lin cried in surprise. "Why didn't you tell us? We were worried. Worried that you didn't have time." "Mr. Feng? Feng Yan?" Wang Ke looked at Feng Yan seriously. He was a handsome man. However, good-looking men were a dime a dozen in the entertainment industry, so it was not unusual. However, Wang Ke did not dare to neglect this young man. He was not only the man that the two little devils, Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin, kept talking about, but also Miss Xia Tian's close friend. It was said that Miss Xia Tian would take the initiative to visit their home every year during the Spring Festival. Just based on the last point, she had to give him enough respect and enthusiasm. Wang Ke covered her cheek that was slapped by Liang Dachong and took the initiative to greet Feng Yan and said, "Mr. Feng, I'm Wang Ku, the agent of Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin. These people suddenly broke in and said they wanted to take Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin to eat supper. I refused their rude request, but they still hit me." "Hello, Miss Wang." Feng Yan greeted Wang Ku and said, "Don't worry, they can't take anyone away. They can't leave." Perhaps it was because Feng Yan's words were too arrogant, or maybe it was because Feng Yan's expression was too serious when he said it. Liang Dachong and his companions laughed. "Young Master Liang, did you hear that? He said we can't take anyone away, no one can leave, haha, it's so funny they don't care about us at all." "Young Master Liang, this person is very interesting. You can't kill him in one go, you have to keep him and play with him slowly. Who does he think he is?" Teacher? Haha, no wonder the quality of students nowadays is getting worse. It's because of such a stupid teacher. Fu Lei didn't laugh. He looked at Fang Yan strangely, guessing what relationship he had with the legendary man. Isn't it funny? Fang Yan asked with a smile. It's too funny. Liang Dacheng applauded and said, My brother said, we can't kill you too early. That won't be fun. Your words have reminded me of something. Fang Yan walked toward Liang Dacheng step by step and said, If the game is very fun, it's best not to clear it in one go. Otherwise, it's easy to feel down. The smile on Liang Dacheng's face became cold, and he stared at Fang Yan with a gaze as vicious as a vulture. He knew what Fang Yan wanted to do, but he didn't care at all, because what Fang Yan wanted to do was also what he wanted to do. Without saying anything, the two bodyguards behind Liang Dacheng surrounded Fang Yan from both sides. They were the ones who made a move against the security guards outside and got rid of all the people who were blocking the way. The man in black on the left, didn't say a word and punched at Fang Yan's left temple. The temple was an important point of the human body, but it was also the weak point of the human body. If it was important, it was weak. Fang Yan could sense the strength he used. If this punch was completely hit, it might cause the temple to explode, serious injuries or even death. He wanted to kill Fang Yan, but Fang Yan didn't hold back. Fang Yan also punched. It was a punch later than his punch, and a punch lighter than his punch. It was also a punch that was even more casual than the one he had thrown. However, the punch arrived first. Fang Yan punched out and his fist fiercely hit the bridge of the black-clothed man's nose. Crack! The man in black's nose broke, and the bones in his face caved in. His body flew out, and blood sprayed in the air like a red fountain. At the same time that the man in black on the left flew out, the man in black on the right kicked at Fang Yan's crotch. This kid was even more vicious. He wanted to destroy the roots of Fang Yan's descendants. Bang! Fang Yan clamped his legs, and the foot that the man in black kicked over was sandwiched between his legs. The man in black exerted all his strength, but the foot didn't move as if it was inlaid. He couldn't move his lower body, and his upper body rushed toward Fang Yan. An uppercut went straight for Fang Yan's eyes. When Fang Yan's eyes hurt, he would naturally let go of his legs. Fang Yan stood where he was without moving. His left hand punched out lightly. Bang! There was a muffled sound. Because one of the man in black's legs was clamped by Fang Yan, his body was fixed in place, and he couldn't fly. His upper body fell backward, and then he was pulled back at an even faster speed. He looked at Fang Yan in horror, and then he opened his mouth and screamed. The man in black's arm made cracking sounds, as if every inch of the bones in his arm was breaking. You have bad breath, Fang Yan said. Pah! Fang Yan punched out, and the man in black finally broke free as he wished. However, his body fell heavily to the ground, and then he couldn't get up again. This was what it truly meant to be unstoppable. This was an instant kill in terms of realm. Fang Yan looked at Liang Dacheng and asked with a smile, The mighty young Master Liang only brings these two rookie bodyguards when you go out? They're not rookies, Liang Dacheng said through gritted teeth. How could they be rookie bodyguards? One of them was a famous fighter in Huaqing's MMA world, and was only recruited by him after he became famous. The other was a member of Mount Song's Shaolin Temple's martial arts team, and used to perform martial arts on stages all over the world. Later, because he couldn't stand poverty, he retired early, and became his loyal confidant. Just now, it was the two of them who took care of those annoying bodyguards. At that time, they were full of power and gave people endless confidence. How could they be defeated so easily now? Fang Yan smiled and said, These bodyguards aren't rookies. Looks like your definition of rookies is very special. Fang Yan walked toward Liang Dacheng again, and said, Do you have any other rookie bodyguards? Or rather, do you have any bodyguards who aren't rookies? If there aren't any, I'm going to beat someone up. I just said, I've never failed to beat someone up I wanted to. You won't disappoint me, right? Liang Dacheng stared at Fang Yan fiercely and said, Brat, do you know who I am? I know. Liang Dacheng. A bastard who's willing to be a pimp in order to please his master. Fang Yan said aloud, Only people who beat people up need to announce their name. People who get beaten up don't need to let everyone in the world know who they are, right? I don't care who you are if you dare to touch a hair on me. I promise I'll let your corpse lie on the street. Really? So I'm dead for sure? Fang Yan pointed at the gauze wrapped around Liang Dacheng's forehead, and said, I threw that piece of wood. How do you feel now? So it's you, Liang Dachong's anger soared again, and he pointed at Fang Yen and scolded. I said, I'll make you wish you were dead. Pa! Fang Yen slapped Liang Dachong's face, and asked, Is this the feeling of living worse than death that you said? Arasima's concert was over, so Fang Yen didn't have to worry about bringing adverse effects to them. Fang Yen was already furious, and now he witnessed them running to the backstage locker room to snatch people. How could he be merciful? Fang Yen did use a lot of strength in this slap. Liang Dachong only felt a buzzing sound in his ears, and his mouth, nose, and ears were all bleeding, but his mind was blank, and he couldn't hear what Fang Yen said. Mr. Fang. Wang Ku was shocked. Although she had Xia Tian's support, she wasn't afraid of anyone's provocation. She had never hit someone like Fang Yen did. As the saying goes, a powerful dragon can't suppress a local snake. No matter how powerful Xia Tian was in Yanjing City, this was Hua City. If the local snakes in Hua City wanted to ruin your plans and cause trouble for you, you would really be suppressed everywhere. It was easy to see the king of hell, but difficult to deal with the little devils. Pah! Fang Yen slapped him again and said, Being humiliated by me to the point where you want to die but can't, is this the feeling of living worse than death that you can't forget? Pah! Fang Yen slapped him again and said, Can you still hear me? It's okay if you can't, as long as you know you're still being beaten. When Fang Yen was about to slap him again, Fu Lei finally spoke and shouted, Mr. Fang, wait a minute. Pa! Fang Yen pulled his hand back down in mid-air, and then looked up at Fu Lei and asked, What did you just say? Liang Dachong suffered another solid slap, and when he was about to fall to the ground in a daze, he was supported by his friends behind him. Fu Lei was stunned for a while and said, I said, please wait a minute, Mr. Fang, but it doesn't matter now. Then can I continue? Fang Yen said with a smile. He walked towards Liang Dachong again. He had only just warmed up. How could he finish so quickly? Chapter 492. Wait. Fu Lei repeatedly shouted for him to stop. He stood in front of Fang Yen to prevent Fang Yen from beating Liang Dachong, who had lost his ability to speak, and said, Mr. Fang is, Teacher Fang Yen? Fang Yen was almost amused by this kid. He looked at Fu Lei and said, This is a very unique way of chatting up people. Yes, I am Fang Yen. I used to be a teacher, but now I am a security guard. Fu Lei did not laugh, but looked at Fang Yen with a more serious expression and said, Mr. Fang and young Master Jiang are old friends? Young Master Jiang? Are you talking about that idiot Jiang Junling? Fang Yen asked with a sneer. He didn't like people saying that he and Jiang Junling were old friends. It made it seem like he had absorbed a lot of light just by being with him. As soon as this remark came out, countless people present gasped. They didn't know who Fang Yen was, but it was impossible for them not to know who Jiang Junling was. A son should be like Jiang Junling, and an adopted son must be like Qin Yitian. These words were too loud and too intimidating. Whether they had entered that level, come into contact with the characters of that realm or the two protagonists of the sentence, it did not affect their worship and fear of these two characters. What kind of person was Jiang Junling? They knew very well in their hearts. What kind of person was Qin Yitian? They also knew very well in their hearts. Their circle of friends was loose and hierarchical. It was difficult for a millionaire's friend to be a billionaire. In the same way, it was difficult for them to be friends with people in the circle of Jiang Junling and Qin Yitian. From their standpoint, they did not dare to offend those two legendary figures. However, this guy who was called Little Teacher by the Arasima group actually said, Jiang Junling, that idiot. Just based on this sentence alone, if he didn't have enough strength to protect himself, maybe they could go to the Pearl River to retrieve his body tomorrow morning. However, he said it out loud, and his face was full of disdain, as if it was shameful to be associated with someone like Jiang Junling. If they were to say that this fellow was just some subject teacher from a school in Huaqing who relied on his looks to deceive girls, they would never believe it. But who was this man? He had never heard of a wealthy family with the surname Fang in Huaqing. There were no wealthy families with the surname Fang in the capital either. Fu Lei's expression changed drastically as if he had heard something inconceivable. Very quickly, his expression returned to normal. He looked at Fang Yen with a smile and said, So it's young Master Fang. I've heard so much about you. Your name is like thunder in my ears. I didn't expect that we would be like a flood crashing into a Dragon King's temple today. One family clashed with another family. Young Master Fong, this is a misunderstanding. Today, I heard the two young friends from the Arasima group perform and was shocked. Da Chong saw that I was delighted and wanted to bridge the gap between us to help me fulfill a wish. We wanted to be friends with these two young friends, but because the attitude of our subordinates was too bad, it caused unnecessary conflicts and misunderstandings. Fu Lei glanced at Liang Da Chong and said, Da Chong is a bit too impatient, but he's forthright and loyal. He's not a bad person deep down. Young Master Fong has already punished them. Why don't we just forget about today's matter? We'll prepare a generous gift to apologize to the two young friends from the Arasima group. How about that? Fong Yen looked at Fu Lei and asked, You know me? I often heard about the interesting stories between young Master Fong and young Master Zheng, even when I was far away in a cold and desolate place. I've always wanted to get to know a young talent like young Master Fong if I had the chance. I didn't expect the hero to be right in front of me, but I didn't recognize him. What a sin. Fu Lei's words were very vague, but the meaning behind his words was very clear. Since you've already offended young Master Zheng Junling, don't provoke us anymore. It would be good if everyone was friendly. When we teased girls, you pretended not to see it. When you hooked up with innocent women, we turned a blind eye. Isn't this the way people live in the circle? Hearing that I even dared to slap Zhang Junling, are you starting to feel guilty? Fong Yen asked with a smile. And then regret provoking my friend? Young Master Fong, Fu Lei felt that Fong Yen didn't know how to speak properly. How could he say such a thing on the spot? Luckily I don't know you. Fong Yen said happily. Oh, it's so lively here. A bright and heroic voice sounded from the door. Fong Yen turned around and saw Lan Shanggu pushing Lu Shu, who was in a wheelchair, into the locker room. Fu Lei saw Lan Shanggu and shouted happily, Brother Lan, you're here too? If I knew earlier, we could have arranged to meet in the same room to drink wine and listen to classical music. It's a great fun. Lan Shanggu ignored Fu Lei and looked at Fong Yen with a smile. He said, I don't have anything to do tonight, so I invited Cripple Lu to watch the classical music concert from Arasima. Lan Shanggu looked at Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin and said with a smile, After all, the two beauties from Arasima are also from Huaqing. It's natural for us to support people from our hometown. Jiang Qin, Yuan Lin, I'm your die-hard fan. You have to give me an autograph later. Otherwise, I'll leave Cripple Lu outside the changing room and not let you out. You won't be so cruel to a disabled person, right? Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin looked at each other. They didn't understand the relationship between Lan Shanggu, Fong Yen, and Fu Lei. They just smiled and didn't say anything. Lu Shu's face turned slightly cold. He said, Lan Shanggu, one day, I'll make you shut your stinky mouth completely. Cripple Lu, do you want to kill me now? It's not easy for you to kill me, but I can kill you easily, Lan Shanggu said carelessly. He didn't take Lu Shu's threat seriously at all. Lan Shanggu walked in front of Fong Yen and stood shoulder to shoulder with him. He stared at Fu Lei and the others with the same hatred. He asked, What happened here? Which blind guy offended our young Master Fong again? It's a misunderstanding. It's really a misunderstanding. Brother Lan, please explain to young Master Fong that we just want to make friends with the two girls from Arasima. We don't have any other intentions. Fu Lei didn't expect Lan Shanggu to also come to this concert. But this was also good. The Fu clan and the Lan clan had some relationship, and the two clans often had business dealings. With a heavyweight like Lan Shanggu helping to slow things down, presumably Fong Yen wouldn't dare to kill them again. As for Liang Da Chong, this kind of guy with bad character, he should just treat this beating as a lesson. Why did he talk to me about Arasima for no reason? Now that he brought trouble to my doorstep, I'm already being kind by not letting him bear the responsibility. Lan Shanggu sneered and said, Fu Lei, do you think I don't know your tricks? If you're wrong, you're wrong. If you're wrong, you have to admit it. It's one thing to do something wrong, but you still have to bear the responsibility after doing something wrong. If you should apologize, you have to apologize. If you should compensate for the loss, you have to compensate for the loss. Lan Shanggu naturally had the intention of interceding on Fu Lei's behalf. He wanted Fu Lei to apologize and compensate for the loss. These were just some insignificant punishments, because he knew very well that if Fong Yen took action, things naturally wouldn't be so easy to solve. Lu Shu sneered and said, "Using young Master Feng's matter as a gift, Lan Shanggu, you really have a good plan." Feng Yan glanced at Lan Shanggu and said, "No. Things shouldn't be handled like this." Feng Yan pointed at Fu Lei and said, "Just now in the VIP room on the second floor, he and Liang Dachang were discussing how to get the two girls from Arasima. I'm too embarrassed to repeat those obscene words." Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin looked at each other, and their faces were smeared with a layer of red. They knew what those obscene words Feng Yan said were referring to. Although they had the protection of Xia Tian, they rarely encountered situations where they were bullied. But occasionally, some words that reached their ears would still make them extremely angry. But this was the ecology of the entertainment circle. Even Xia Tian couldn't change the rules and purify the environment. He could only ensure that the people around him wouldn't be assimilated. "I had already punished them at that time. I didn't expect them to be so daring that they forcefully ran into the room after the concert to snatch people." Feng Yan pointed at Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin and said, "Unfortunately, the Mr. Feng they were talking about on stage was me. They were both my students." "Young master, what do you mean?" The smile on Lan Shanggu's face disappeared. He looked at Feng Yan with a serious expression and asked aloud. Feng Yan walked towards Fu Lei step by step, and Fu Lei's body began to retreat. He had seen Feng Yan's skills and knew that he was far from being his opponent. He originally thought that those young masters who had been fawning over him would stand up and help him, but even when he retreated to the corner of the wall, he didn't touch anyone's body. Those guys had already retreated to the sides. Feng Yan grabbed Fu Lei's neck and lifted his body up from the ground. Fu Lei's face turned purple and his body couldn't move at all. Clang! Feng Yan's knee ruthlessly attacked Fu Lei's lower abdomen. Fu Lei's body curled up like a shrimp. His face turned black and purple, as if he had serious food poisoning. His mouth couldn't speak, but a large amount of food and liquid flowed out from the corner of his mouth. Feng Yan was worried that the compound would flow to the back of his hand, so he threw Fu Lei's body on the ground with some disdain. Then he kicked over and over again. Bang! 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 Every time Feng Yan kicked out, Fu Lei would scream along with it. His body curled up on the ground, his hands tightly hugging the important parts of his head. He looked even more miserable than a beggar. Every time Feng Yan kicked out, the bodies of the young masters of Hua City who were watching from the side would also tremble. The person lying on the ground was the young master Fu Lei, whom they had been trying their best to fawn over. In the blink of an eye, he was being kicked and beaten like a dog. This Mr. Feng, what kind of pervert was he? Did he know the rules? Did he have any dignity? Too unfriendly. Bang! 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 Feng Yan kicked more than 10 times until Fu Lei lay on the ground motionless. Then, he turned to look at Lan Shanggu and asked, "What did you say just now? What is the relationship between you, friends?" Chapter 493. What is the relationship between you two, friends? He saw him make a move, saw him choke, saw him kick a person to the point where it was unclear whether he was dead or alive. Lan Shanggu suddenly felt a strong sense of crisis. This was Feng Yan's response to his forceful intercession and his expression of dissatisfaction with his attitude. Feng Yan was dissatisfied with himself because he had stretched his hand too far. Was it just because of this? It probably wasn't that simple, right? Or did he also know about the flirting between the Lan family and the Jiang family? Lan Shanggu felt bitter. At the Blue Mountain Club, Jiang Junling said in front of him that he was going to visit the Lan family's old master. Jiang Junling didn't break his promise and went to visit the Lan family with generous gifts the next afternoon. The Lan family also secretly gave Jiang Junling the highest treatment. The Lan family's old master, who hadn't seen guests for a long time, personally accompanied Jiang Junling to drink tea in the study. Because of Lan Shanggu's special status in the Lan family, he was lucky enough to stay in the study and become one of the companions. Jiang Junling once again proposed the idea of joining forces with the Lan family to invest in Longtu Group. The Lan family's old master agreed after a moment of hesitation. Both sides would invest $1 billion and work together to expand Longtu Group. Then they would share the fruits of victory. In Longtu Group, the Lan family would be one of the 3 major shareholders. With the Jiang family, Jiang Zhulu would exercise the same important rights. Jiang Junling expressed his admiration for the Lan family's foresight and thanked the old master for encouraging and guiding the young people. Both sides had a good talk. Jiang Junling left after dinner and Lan Shanggu immediately entered the old master's study to talk to his secret agent. Lan Shanggu strongly requested the old master to give up the cooperation plan with the Jiang family and work hard to play the role of a pure seller of Chaoyan technology. The old master had a different view on this. He thought that the Lan family shouldn't put all their eggs in the same basket. If the Lan family invested in Longtu Group, they would become one of the 3 major shareholders of Longtu Group, a new energy industry. With the vigorous development of the energy industry, the Lan family would become the decision-maker in this field and not just the errant slave of a certain family. Yes, the Lan family was just a lower-tier seller of Chaoyan technology. Chaoyan technology could use you, but they could also kick you away. The old master's worries were not without reason. What's more, if Longtu Group was really successful, it could also create pressure on Chaoyan technology, increasing their own weight in front of Chaoyan technology and Fengyan and Lu Chaoga. Most importantly, any business that could make money was a good business, so why not? What the old master said made sense, but Lan Shanggu knew that things weren't that simple. With Fengyan and Lu Chaoga's personalities, how could they possibly allow the Lan clan to be two-timing? Lan Shanggu and the old master had conflicting views and a fierce conflict broke out between them. Lan Shanggu cared about the reactions of Fengyan and Lu Chaoga, but the old master cared more about the support of the Jiang family. At that time the old master sat on the armchair, looked at Lan Shanggu and said something meaningful. No matter how hard Fengyan works, no matter how Chaoyan develops, the Feng family can't be the Jiang family, and Chaoyan technology can't be the Jiang family's business. Yes, the old master didn't think that the young and energetic Fengyan had any chance of winning against the 1,000-year-old Jiang family. This had nothing to do with ability or talent. He just lost in terms of time. Lan Shanggu was the future heir of the Lan family, but his future had yet to come. The importance of Lan Shanggu in the Lan family was decided by the old master, and what the old master decided was what the Lan family decided. Therefore, the matter of the Lan family and the Jiang family jointly investing in Longtu Group was being discussed and carried out in secret. Now, had Fengyan raised a big stick to beat them up? During the process of Fengyan beating up young Master Fu Lei, the entire changing room was silent. Other than heavy breathing, no one said anything or made a sound to stop it. Lu Shu sat steadily on the wheelchair, a cold smile on his lips. No one knew if he was mocking Fu Lei's stupidity or the cleverness of this matter. The other young masters' faces were as white as paper, and the timid one's legs were trembling. Even standing straight was a difficult task for them. Every time Fengyan kicked Wang Ku, the manager of Planet Blue, his heart would tremble. When Fengyan was done, her body stopped trembling. She had been in the entertainment industry for many years and had seen all kinds of people. But she had never met a man with a personality like Fengyan. This kind of person had a vicious mouth and was ruthless. He didn't know how to compromise, didn't know how to be mellow, and wasn't suitable to be in the industry. It was easy to offend people. Wang Ke turned to look at Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin, wanting to persuade them to stay away from this dangerous man. But when she saw Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin's excited faces and stars in their eyes, she gave up the idea. They probably wouldn't listen to any bad things she said about Fengyan. Aren't they your friends? Fengyan looked at Lan Shanyu and asked again. What was the point of asking such a question after the fight? Or rather, it had a deeper meaning than asking such a question before the fight. Lan Shanyu laughed and said, "To be honest, young master, the Fu family is our business partner. The Fu family has been operating in Mo Bay for a long time, and they have quite a few mines with good quality. The Lan family imports ores from the Fu family. Because of this, Fu Lei and I have known each other since we were young. But we have been too busy these years, so we haven't seen each other much. I didn't expect him to do such an animal thing tonight. If not for young master's timely discovery, the 2 classical music masters of our City of Flowers would have been destroyed by him. Such an idiot, even if young master taught him a lesson, it wouldn't be enough. When I go back, I will definitely call Uncle Fu and ask him to teach Fu Lei a lesson." Fengyan looked at Lan Shanyu and said gently, "Fu Lei is your good friend, it's natural for you to speak up for him. If you don't help your good friend when he is in trouble, then I will start to suspect you of being a heartless person. But you didn't speak up at the right time. He just made a mistake and came to cause trouble for my 2 friends. If I let him go because of one sentence from you and let this matter go, isn't the cost of his mistake too low? Just because he knows Lan Shanyu, he can do whatever he wants? If he knows Lan Shanyu in every city, Does that mean he can do this in every city? I didn't think it through and let young master laugh at me. Lan Shanyu apologized sincerely. That's a little harsh, Feng Yan said with a smile. I will teach him a lesson and let him receive the punishment he deserves. I will let him know that if he does bad things, he must be prepared to be caught. Lan Shanyu's heart skipped a beat. Feng Yan had already said it so clearly. If he still didn't understand what he meant, then he wouldn't deserve to be one of the 4 talents of watching. A prodigal who repents is more valuable than gold. All mistakes can be corrected, Lan Shanyu said in a low voice. I believe Fu Lei already understands this. Not only did Fu Lei understand, but he also understood. Since Feng Yan didn't say it clearly, it meant that he didn't want to fall out with the Lan family. This way, he could still put in some effort in the middle. If Feng Yan directly asked why the Lan family wanted to cooperate with the Jiang family, it meant that there was no turning back. I also hope that he can understand. Feng Yan nodded, then said self-deprecatingly, after being a teacher for a year, I've developed a bad habit of educating people. That's not good. How is this educating people? Young master's words are priceless advice. Those without connections won't have the chance to learn, Lan Shanyu said fawningly. Those who understand will think it's priceless advice. Those who don't understand will think it's full of nonsense. Feng Yan pointed at Fu Lei and said, all right, since Shanyu has spoken, I have to give you face. I won't break his arms and legs, but I won't destroy his life. Take him away. Thank you, young master, Lan Shanyu said with a smile. He waved his hand, and 2 black-clothed men immediately rushed over from behind, picked up Fu Lei from the ground, and walked out. Lan Shanyu looked at Feng Yan and said, young master, I won't disturb you anymore. Go do what you need to do, Feng Yan said with a smile. Lan Shanyu was still in the mood to greet Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin and said, Jiang Qin, Yuan Lin, you guys owe me an autograph. I'll remember this. I won't forget, Yuan Lin said with a smile. Lan Shanyu walked in front of the willow tree and said, Cripple, are you coming with me? The willow tree chuckled and said, the exciting show is over, what's the point of staying? Go, of course I'm leaving. Thus, Lan Shanyu pushed the willow tree and left. The other young masters supported Liang Dachang and followed closely behind. Everyone was very careful when passing by Feng Yan, afraid that they would accidentally anger Feng Yan, and then they would become Liang Dachang or Fu Lei. This guy was really ruthless. When everyone had left, Wang Ke looked at Feng Yan with a smile and said, Mr. Feng, thank you for helping us out. If you hadn't appeared in time, I really don't know what would have happened. You see, it's already very late, and Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin have been busy for the whole night. Why don't we let these 2 girls go back to the hotel to rest? Feng Yan felt that what Wang Ke said was very reasonable and was about to nod in agreement when Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin ran over and hugged Feng Yan's arms. Jiang Qin looked at Feng Yan with a sweet smile and said, Mr. Feng, I'm not tired. I'll go with you wherever you go. Yuan Lin also said with a smile, I really want to eat Huaqing's seafood barbecue. Why don't we treat Mr. Feng to something? Wang Ke's face was full of helplessness and said, then I'll arrange for the driver to send you there. Chapter 494. I'm not dead, am I? Fu Lei turned over his body and immediately cried out in pain. He felt like all the bones in his body were about to fall apart. His stomach, shoulders, back, buttocks and head, every part of his body was in pain, excruciating pain. Knowing pain means you won't die for now. An eerie voice rang out beside him. Fu Lei climbed up from his seat and saw Lan Shanggu sitting in the front row. He couldn't help but grin and said, Brother Lan, only when I see you do I know I'm still alive. That bastard was really ruthless. He almost killed me. There's not a single part of my body that's fine now. Do you know how lucky you are to still have the chance to sit here and talk to me? Lan Shanggu said expressionlessly, if I didn't coincidentally go to Arasima's concert, if I didn't coincidentally go to the artist's dressing room, do you know what would have happened to you? All fate isn't fate. All coincidences aren't coincidences. Can he really kill me? Fu Lei sneered. A life for a life. Does he have the guts? A life for a life? Someone has to prove that he did it first. Lan Shanggu's face was full of sarcasm. Even if he doesn't kill you, breaking one of your legs and destroying your offsprings is something he can still do. He's too arrogant. Why? Fu Lei said viciously, Brother Lon, you people are just going to watch him do whatever he wants in watching? You've already spoken up for me, but he won't even give you face. Who does he think he is? Lan Shanggu sighed. Because he's Fang Yen. Fu Lei searched for a long time but couldn't find his glasses. Looks like he lost them when he was beaten. He took out a silk handkerchief from his pocket and wiped the wounds on his face, saying coldly, evil people need to be dealt with. Someone has to stand up and teach him a lesson. Otherwise, he'll never be able to find his place. Lan Shanggu suddenly turned around and stared fiercely at Fu Lei, saying, Young Master Fu, don't play the game you like in Mo Bay. Watching has its own rules. Are you scared? Even Jiang Junling couldn't do anything to him. Who do you think you are? Lan Shanggu said with a serious expression. Furthermore, he is far more dangerous than you can imagine. If you really want to deal with him, then get out of my car immediately. The Lan family will cut off all business with the Fu family. Of course, after you get out of the car, I will give him a call and kindly remind him to be careful of your revenge. Fu Lei's expression flickered for a moment before he burst into laughter. He covered his throbbing cheek and said, I'm just joking. Why is Brother Lan so serious? Don't joke with me about such things, Lan Shanggu said with a smile. Fu Lei looked at Lanshan Valley and asked, You really can't move? We really can't move. Lan Shanggu said firmly. This kid is really ruthless. Fu Lei sighed. The Lan Mountain Valley had many other luxurious residences outside, but tonight, they returned to the Lan clan's old residence in the North Sea Plains. Lan Shanggu's car stopped in the courtyard. He asked the butler who came out to greet him, Is Grandpa asleep? Master just wrote a piece of calligraphy. He drank some milk and was about to sleep. The butler smiled and said, Valley, why are you back today? I'm going to talk to Grandpa, Lan Shanggu said. Young master. The butler stopped him. It's late. Master is about to sleep. If it's not something urgent, we can talk tomorrow morning. It's something urgent. Lan Shanggu ignored the butler's obstruction and quickly walked to his grandpa's bedroom. After Lan Shanggu finished speaking, the old man sitting at the head of the bed asked, This is his reaction? This is his reaction. Lan Shanggu said, The Lan family and the Jiang family made such a big move. How can he not know? So what if he knows? Grandpa Lan asked. Could it be that Fang Yen is so impressive that he only allows the Lan clan to follow behind him and wag our tails and beg for mercy? But we can't run other businesses? Grandpa, it's not that we can't run other businesses. It's just that we don't need to run the energy business anymore. Wasn't the Lu family's ending bad enough? The Jiang family is split up. Who still respects them now? Why does the Lan family have to get involved in this mess? The old man sighed softly and said, Valley, you're still too shallow. You need more practice. Grandpa, give up. As long as we maintain a good relationship with Chao Yen, we can become the biggest beneficiary of the energy industry. Why must we jump into the battlefield and fight with others? That's not something we're good at. Only by fighting with others can we become the biggest beneficiary. The old man said firmly, Valley, it's decided. I'm old and tired. I'll leave the future to you. Your biggest weakness is that you're too young. Your biggest strength is also that you're too young. Young people should have the vigor and drive of young people. You can't always guard the city like this. Lan Shanggu knew that his objection failed again. Grandpa was still more optimistic about the future of the Jiang family. Yes, the Jiang family had been standing for 1,000 years. How could a small company that had been established for 2 or 3 years compete with them? In 1,000 years, how many challengers had the Jiang family met? And the result? The Jiang family was still the Jiang family. The graves of those challengers were already covered with thorny trees and weeds. Would Fang Yen really be an exception? Of course, there was no need for a driver arranged by Wang Ku. That was no different from having a spy by his side. Fang Yen drove Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin to the barbecue stall under Haizhu Bridge. In the past, Fang Yen often ate supper with them there. Both of them couldn't forget the seafood barbecue there. These days, supper, like comrade, miss and godfather, had become a word that had been ruined. Modern people imposed another meaning on it. Fu Lei and Liang Dachang wanted to treat Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin to supper, but Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin were unwilling. Fang Yen wanted them to rest early, but the two girls insisted on treating Fong Yen to supper. It had to be said that this was really a humorous matter. Mr. Fong, why did you want to come to our concert? If you want to come, just let us know. We'll reserve the front of the stage for you. Mr. Fong, what do you think of our performance tonight? Which program do you like the most? I'm guessing it must be Swallow Dock, right? That's because the name of this song is about your swallow dock. Mr. Fong, did you hear Honey confess to you on the stage? She said she misses you so much. Hee hee, am I the third wheel between you two? The two girls were a little older, but they still maintained their lively nature. Since they got in the car, they had been chattering non-stop, and because of the more experiences they had, the bolder their topics were. Yuan Lin also teased the relationship between Fong Yen and Jiang Qin from time to time. On the contrary, it was Jiang Qin who became a little shy because Yuan Lin saw through his thoughts. Just now, she did stand on the stage and boldly confessed. She thought it was just a simple interaction with her fans, but she didn't expect that the person involved was also at the scene. Fong Yen concentrated on driving, enjoying this long-awaited gathering of friends. I like every program of yours very much. Fong Yen said with a smile. I watched you walk on this road with my own eyes. At that time, you were still ignorant children, but now you have become the idols in the hearts of countless people. I didn't expect you to progress so fast, and I didn't expect you to be so talented in classical instruments. I arrived at the scene very early, looking forward to your appearance with the other fans, looking forward to the surprise you brought us. Not only did you bring surprises, but you also brought shock. As your teacher, I am really proud of you. Mr. Fong, are you still a teacher at Rosefinch Secondary? Jiang Qin asked. No. Fong Yen said. Ah, you left Rosefinch? Jiang Qin exclaimed. But it doesn't matter, you can go wherever you like. I'm still at Rosefinch. Fong Yen said, but I'm no longer a teacher, I'm a security guard. When they arrived at the familiar seafood stall, Fong Yen parked the car and then walked inside with Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin. The people of Huaqing like to eat barbecue, drink cold beer, and chat in the open air. But Fong Yen insisted on bringing the two girls into the private room inside. They were originally delicate and cute, and now they were members of the famous Arasima group. If their fans saw this, they might not be able to eat in peace again. Yuan Lin didn't like eating in the private room, so she said pitifully, I thought that when I returned to my hometown, I could sit at the stall and eat seafood and drink beer without caring about my image, but I didn't expect this wish to come true. Fong Yen looked at her with a smile and said, Who asked you to be a big star now? Sigh, this feeling is really, Yuan Lin thought about it seriously and said, It's sweet and burdensome. Jiang Qin took the menu and ordered the grilled oysters and conch that Fong Yen liked to eat, and the sori, kebabs, eggplant, and corn that Yuan Lin liked to eat. He also ordered his favorite chicken feet and white bean sprouts. He also took the initiative to order 3 mugs of beer, preparing to drink one each with Fong Yen and Yuan Lin. Jiang Qin handed the menu to the waiter, then sat at the side and quietly looked at Fong Yen. Fong Yen turned his face towards her, and she immediately blushed and moved her face to the side. Yuan Lin burst out laughing, then looked at Fong Yen and asked, Mr. Fong, now that Qin Qin and I have to call you teacher, if you marry Qin Qin in the future, will I have to call Qin Qin master's wife? Yuan Lin, watch me tear your mouth. Jiang Qin was extremely shy, and she pounced over to grab Yuan Lin's little mouth. Yuan Lin hurriedly jumped up to dodge, and played hide-and-seek with Jiang Qin along the table. She said, If you don't want to, then I'll marry Mr. Fong, and you have to call me master's wife. Fong Yen felt that he couldn't sit still anymore. How could she bully an honest person like this? Chapter 495. Ding dang. The 3 glasses of beer collided with each other and made a crisp sound. Cheers to your results, Fong Yen said. Cheers to our reunion in 3 years, Jiang Qin said. Yuan Lin giggled and said, Cheers to the future when you have to call me master's wife. Not sure if it was because there weren't many customers, but the food that Fong Yen and the others ordered was quickly served. It was the same old restaurant with the same familiar smell. Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin seemed to have missed the seafood barbecue in Huaqing for a long time. As soon as the oysters were served, the two grabbed one each and ate them greedily. The shells outside were heated up by the charcoal fire, and the two were so hot that they couldn't bear to put them down. Slow down, be careful not to get burned, Fong Yen said with a smile. Wouldn't it be embarrassing if your fans saw your gluttonous faces? I don't care about them, Yuan Lin said coquettishly. The oysters outside don't taste like home. The food at home is still the best. Exactly. When we were in Yanjing, Yuan Lin always talked about the oysters at home and the soy sauce pork trotters made by my mom. Jiang Qin sucked the juice on his finger and said, Mr. Fong, you haven't eaten at my house for a long time, right? My mom always talks about you. Fong Yan nodded and said, I just returned to Huaqing and have a few urgent matters to deal with. I haven't had the time to visit Sister Li and Uncle Jiang. If you go visit your parents, you have to visit mine too. Yuan Lin buried her head in her food and said without lifting her head. Otherwise, it's not fair. My mom has been talking about you too. Every time you call me, you'll ask me how your teacher Fong is doing. If he has time, ask him to come over and have a meal or something. Teacher Fong, aren't you embarrassed to say no? That doesn't make sense, Fong Yan said with a puzzled expression. What's unreasonable? Yuan Lin asked. You're still so young. Why would they worry that you won't be able to get married? Who's worried? My mother is not worried at all. Yuan Lin said proudly. There are many men who like me. Then why are they in such a hurry for me to visit them? Fong Yan asked with a smile. That's because you are our benefactor. At first, we wanted to study music, but our family didn't agree. Now that they see that we have achieved such outstanding results, they naturally want to thank you properly. Yuan Lin explained with a serious expression. Then she looked at Fong Yan with a face full of joy and exclaimed, Mr. Fong, it feels great that you're willing to eat barbecue, drink beer and chat with us. I don't want to either, Fong Yan said with a smile. You dragged me here by force. What could I do? If it can make you happy, we'll pull you out every day, Jiang Qin said. Mr. Fong, you don't know how annoying you used to be. Yuan Lin and I said 100 words to you, and you wouldn't respond to us. We said ours, and you thought of your own. You completely treated us like transparent people. Sorry. Don't say sorry. Jiang Qin interrupted Fong Yan's words and said, As long as you're happy, we're willing to suffer any grievances. After eating and drinking their fill, they promised to meet again the next day. Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin finally agreed to let Fong Yan let them go back to the hotel to rest. They had been in high-intensity rehearsals for the past few days, and they had performed on stage for more than 2 hours tonight. Their physical strength had long been exhausted. The joy of seeing Fong Yan had supported them until now. As their stomachs were full, their brains began to lack oxygen, and it was difficult for them to keep their eyes open. Yuan Lin ran out to pay the bill. This little rich woman had always maintained a good habit of paying the bill first. Looking at the seafood sign above her head, Su Qi said with a smile, Teacher Kai, let's sit here. Baldy looked at the sign and said, Okay. Let's eat here. I like this place, and I used to often gather here with the teachers from school. As long as you don't order crabs, everything else will be fine. Su Qi pursed her lips and said, Teacher Kai, we've agreed that this meal is on me. You can order whatever you want, whether it's crabs, lobsters, or abalones. You've been with me for so long today, so it's only right that I treat you to a meal. Baldy sat down on an empty table with some apprehension. Even now it still felt unreal. She asked in a low voice, That, Su Qi, are you? Su Qi was looking at the menu. Hearing Baldy's words, she asked in confusion, Teacher Kai, what are you talking about? Are you going to do something to you? You're not trying to hit on me, are you? Baldy asked with a vigilant expression. Su Qi, let's be clear. I admit that you're really beautiful, and I quite like you. But the school has a rule that teachers and students are not allowed to be in a relationship. I'm a great teacher. Teacher Kai, security isn't a teacher. I'm not done yet. I'm a great teacher security guard, and I'm responsible for Rose Finch's safety. I can't, and I'm not allowed to take the lead in breaking the school's rules, Baldy said in a sad voice. Su Qi, just give up on me. There will be better things waiting for you in the future. We're not compatible. Su Qi didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She said, Teacher Kai, you're thinking too much. I don't mean that. I just want to treat you to a simple meal. By the way, you said that you used to gather here with your colleagues. Did Mr. Fong come with you? Fong Yan. Why do you keep mentioning him? I'm just asking casually. There's no point in asking. I've already told you that Mr. Fong is taken now, and other people can only look at him from outside the courtyard. He has a handsome appearance and an outstanding temperament in the crowd. How can a godlike man like that be touched by any woman? He's like the most precious jewel that only our old leader Principal Lu is qualified to have. Are they married? Su Chi asked with a sigh. No. Baldy looked at Su Chi with hostility and said, even if they're not married, it has nothing to do with you. You should just give up on this idea. Order the dishes, order the crabs, 3 of them weighing 8 ounces. Order the lobsters, 3 of them that are a foot long. Order the abalones, 2 or 3 of them, 3 to 5 of them. I'm hungry. Baldy was very angry. He felt that young girls nowadays were so annoying. They didn't like men of the same age as them, but they wanted mature uncles like them. Girl, the uncles don't ask. Su Chi was a little depressed, but she still generously ordered the crabs, lobsters, and abalones for Baldy. She felt that it was not enough, so she ordered 5 or 6 kinds of expensive seafood from the seafood stall. Baldy's heart was filled with a sense of guilt. He felt that he shouldn't have said it so straightforwardly. Su Chi sat there in a daze without saying anything, and Baldy didn't know what to say. The process of waiting for the dishes to be served was a long time. Baldy had to take out his phone and read online novels. Eating the fish with pickled cabbage and fish at the school gate and reading the urban novels written by Liu Xiaohui were one of his few hobbies. Fang Yan went out with the 2 little girls, Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin, and saw Su Chi and Baldy sitting at the entrance of the seafood stall from afar. Fang Yan was hesitating whether to greet them or not, but Baldy seemed to have sensed it and raised his head. His eyes were puzzled at first, but then he pushed the chair away and jumped up with a face full of surprise. As if he felt that his behavior was very uncivilized, Baldy became sneaky again. He went straight to the front of Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin, and with a flushed face he stammered and asked, "Excuse me, are you Arasima?" Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin were shocked. They thought, why did I meet a fan at this time? There were so many people eating at the food stall at the entrance. If I let him shout, wouldn't it alarm everyone? When Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin were hesitating whether to admit it or not, Fang Yan had already stood in front of Baldy and said, "Baldy, why are you here?" Baldy suddenly saw Fang Yan and exclaimed, "Mr. Fang, why are you here?" It seemed that this guy only had eyes for the Arasima group. He actually ignored his old friend who was walking in the front. "Why can't I be here?" Fang Yan said angrily. "Why are you here?" Baldy said angrily. Seeing Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin following closely behind Fang Yan, Baldy became even angrier and said, "How can you be here? How can you be like this? I already said that I will come out to block those crazy bees and butterflies for you, and you go back to take care of Principal Lu. Everyone will work together for a better life in the future. But, why did you sneak out? And with such a beautiful girl. If you don't know how to love yourself, what's the point of my efforts?" Fang Yan hesitated whether he should knock this crazy guy out or not. Jiang Qin looked at Baldy with puzzled eyes and asked, "Mr. Fang, is this your friend?" "My school colleague," Fang Yan said. "Also a friend." Baldy's expression changed very quickly. He looked at Jiang Qin with a face full of smiles and said, "Miss Jiang Qin, nice to meet you. I'm Mr. Fang Yan's colleague and also his best friend." "Nice to meet you." Jiang Qin took the initiative to shake Baldy's hand. Baldy's face suddenly turned red. He wiped his palm on his clothes again and again before carefully shaking Jiang Qin's hand. He said excitedly, "Miss Jiang Qin, nice to meet you too. You're even prettier than in reality." "Am I not in reality right now?" Jiang Qin asked slyly. "I'm talking about reality." "No, I'm talking about TV." Yuan Lin also shook hands with Baldy. Baldy was so happy that he didn't even know he was Baldy. Su Chi walked over and saw the Arasima group that was very close to Fang Yan. Su Chi looked at Fang Yan and asked, "Mr. Fang, the person you said is braver than me, is it one of them?" Chapter 496. Fang Yan didn't expect to meet Baldy, nor did he expect Baldy to be with Su Chi. Moreover, the 2 of them would go to the food stall for supper. The scene of the 2 of them standing together was so beautiful that Fang Yan couldn't imagine it. Hearing Su Chi's question, Fang Yan raised his eyebrows slightly, smiled at Su Chi, and said indifferently, "It's not them." Su Chi was stunned for a moment. "Not them? If it's not them, then who is it?" Even Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin of the Arasima group weren't the woman who could make his heart palpitate. Then, What kind of woman could occupy such an important position? Su Qi was really curious, but also really unwilling. What kind of man is this? She felt that he was different from the first time they met. His appearance was handsome, but his temperament was deep. For such a young man to have such a calm temperament, it was indeed a very strange thing. His eyes were very clean, but there was endless anger hidden in the depths of his eyes. He was like a child who was wronged, but didn't know who to vent his anger to. His gentle and elegant side was like the sea, making people involuntarily drown in it. His ruthless and cold side was like a flame, burning fiercely, making people aware of the danger, but couldn't help but want to turn into a moth and fly away. She originally thought that he was just an ordinary person with charm, but now she found out that he had a close relationship with the Arasima group. Such a person was only a security guard at Rosefinch Secondary. Wasn't this the most absurd thing in the world? While Su Qi and Fang Yan were talking, Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin were also looking at Su Qi. She was a very beautiful girl, just like herself when she was young. Moreover, this girl had an air of nobility about her, and it was obvious that she wasn't born in an ordinary family. Yuan Lin was an expert in this area. She could easily tell from the stitches of the girl's skirt, the fabric of the shoes, and the style of the bag she carried with her, that this girl's outfit was worth at least 100,000 Huaxia dollars. The two women looked at each other with a tacit understanding that they were on each other's side. Hearing the strange conversation between Fang Yan and Su Qi, Yuan Lin asked, "Mr. Fang, what are you talking about?" "Speaking of an old friend," Fang Yan said with a smile. "Is that so? Do we know each other?" asked Yuan Lin. Fang Yan nodded. Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin had met Qin Yiqian before. "Is it Sister Qin?" Jiang Qin was smart and immediately understood who the girl was. Su Qi had used adjectives like braver than her. Qin Yiqian was undoubtedly the bravest girl they had ever met. "Oh, Sister Yi is also very brave." Fang Yan didn't answer Jiang Qin's question. Instead, he looked at Su Qi and said, "You haven't eaten yet, right? We'll go first. You should go back and rest early after eating." Then he said to Baldy, "Baldy, you must ensure Su Qi's safety." After saying that, he walked toward the parking lot. "Wait a minute," shouted Baldy angrily. Fang Yan turned around and looked at Baldy, asking, "Is there anything else?" Baldy's face was flushed. He walked to Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin and asked in a low voice, "Excuse me, can I take a picture with you?" Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin nodded. So, Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin, one on the left and one on the right, accompanied Baldy to take a picture. Because Baldy was too shy, he bowed his head and was too embarrassed to look at the camera when taking the picture. This picture made Baldy look too wretched, like a robber who was arrested by two beautiful policewomen. Fang Yan left with Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin, leaving Su Qi in deep thought. "That's Sister Qin. What kind of person is she?" Su Qi asked. "She's not a person." Baldy was still immersed in the glory of taking a picture with his idol. He said casually, "She's a goddess." As usual, Fang Yan woke up at 6 in the morning. When he opened the window and was about to change into his exercise clothes to go to the backyard, he saw a black Mercedes-Benz parked in front of the villa. A cold sneer appeared at the corner of Fang Yan's mouth. Then he quietly walked downstairs. At this time, Lu Chaoga hadn't woken up yet. He didn't want to disturb her rest. Fang Yan walked to the window of the Mercedes-Benz and looked inside. Then, he gently knocked on the window. The window quickly opened. Lan Shanggu, who had just woken up from his sleep, rubbed his eyes and said embarrassedly, "Young Master Fang, I'm sorry, I fell asleep while waiting. When did you get here?" Fang Yan asked. "Last night." Lan Shanggu opened the door and got out of the car. The bones in his body were cracking. He had maintained the same posture in the car for far too long. "Come in and have a cup of coffee," Fang Yan said. Fang Yan personally brewed a pot of coffee. He carried it to the living room and poured a cup for Lan Shanggu. Lan Shanggu quickly thanked him. Fang Yan held a cup and smelled the rich aroma of the coffee. He asked, "You didn't come to see me last night just to get a cup of coffee, did you?" The coffee had a rich aroma, but when it entered his mouth, there was a strong astringent bitterness. The coffee was bitter, but Lan Shanggu's heart was even more bitter. Lan Shanggu looked at Fang Yan with a serious expression and said, "Young master, I'm here to apologize to you." "Apologize? Is it because of helping Fu Lei?" That's already in the past. You didn't do anything wrong, Fang Yan said. Young master, it's something else, Lan Shanggu said. The Lan clan is preparing to invest in Longtu together with the Jiang clan, increasing their investment in Longtu Group. So, my portion of the shares will be diluted? Unless I also invest, otherwise, I won't have much say in Longtu, is that right? Yes, Lan Shanggu said honestly. This is a good thing for the Lan clan. Fang Yan looked at Lan Shanggu thoughtfully and said, everyone knows that the energy industry will be booming, but the threshold for this field is too high. Normal people can't get in. If the Lan clan can accept this admission ticket from the Jiang clan, it will be a huge boost to the Lan clan's future development. The Jiang clan is really generous to the Lan clan. After the death of the Jiang clan's elephant, he was actually willing to cut off the fattest thigh for you. Lan Shanggu didn't think that Fang Yan was praising him. He stared at Fang Yan with burning eyes and asked, what do you think, young Master Fang? What do I think? Fang Yan squinted his eyes and smiled. What opinion can I have? I'm an outsider. I don't have the right to decide the Lan clan's matters. If that's the case, you'll have to blame me for not being sensible. I know what to do, Lan Shanggu said with a heavy voice, as if he had made a huge decision. Fang Yan patted Lan Shanggu's shoulder and smiled. Have some coffee. My cooking is not bad. I won't disappoint you. Lan Shanggu took a sip and smiled. Young Master Fang never disappoints us. The news that Lan Shanggu wanted to separate from the Lan clan quickly spread throughout Huaqing. He's a madman. A complete and utter madman. Is he F*King crazy? The Lan clan was originally his, the future successor of the Lan clan. Who is he going to separate from? Split his own clan? What is Lan Shanggu trying to do? What is the Lan clan trying to do? I don't understand. I really don't understand. Lan Shanggu looks like a madman, but he's actually a madman. Madmen are the scariest. The Lan clan's old mansion. All the important figures of the Lan clan gathered together. Other than third uncle who was far away in Beijing and fifth uncle and fifth aunt who were far away in America, this was the most complete gathering of the clan. Bang! Old Master Lan gently placed the teacup in his hand on the table. Although his movements were very gentle, it still seemed too loud and clear when everyone was even breathing cautiously. Old Master Lan looked at Lan Shanggu who was kneeling in the middle of the central room and asked in a hoarse voice, have you decided? No decision. No decision. Lan Shanggu's father, Lan Ling, jumped out and knelt beside Lan Shanggu. He said anxiously, Dad, Shanggu is usually crazy. This time, he's even more sick. I'll bring him back and have a good talk with him. Dad, don't be angry. If you're not happy, just beat him up and scold him. Let him have a taste of our Lan clan's family rules. That's enough. Old Master Lan waved his hand and said impatiently, I'm asking about Shanggu. What are you doing here? Is Shanggu still a child? Dad, Shanggu is a child. Bastard. Old Master Lan was angry. If he's a child, will the future of the Lan clan be in his hands? If he's a child, will the lives of the entire family be his toys? When everyone supported him in the past, why didn't you say that he was a child? Dad, don't try to persuade me. I've already made up my mind. Lan Shanggu raised his head and said loudly, I'm leaving the Lan clan. What are your conditions? Let me take Dashan Trade away, Lan Shanggu said. Dashan Trade was founded by Lan Shanggu. Previously, it was under the name of the Lan clan's corporation. However, Lan Shanggu held a large number of shares and was also the legal representative of the trading company. Lan Shanggu and Chaoyan Technology, which was represented by Lu Chaoga, were working together. Dashan Trade was helping Chaoyan Technology's Little Flame products to be the sellers. Anything else? Nothing else, Lan Shanggu said. Wow! Everyone was in an uproar. The Lan clan was huge and had a few listed companies under their name. As one of the most important figures in the Lan clan, Lan Shanggu's request to leave the clan was only for Dashan Trade. This made the other members of the Lan clan laugh so hard that they couldn't close their mouths. You think so highly of him? I'm willing to take a gamble. Old Master Lan pondered for a long time and said, I'll give Hua Mao to you as well. Thank you, Grandpa, Lan Shanggu said gratefully. Old Master Lan waved his hand and said, Go to the ancestral hall and receive a beating, then get out. Lan Shanggu didn't say anything else. He kowtowed to where old Master Lan was sitting. When he raised his head, his forehead was dripping with blood. Old Master Lan was nowhere to be seen. Chapter 497. Clap. A white jade chess piece landed on the chessboard. The young man smiled calmly and said, "Checkmate." The middle-aged woman sitting across from him stared at the chessboard for a long time, then shook her head and sighed, saying, "It's hard to attack when advancing, and hard to defend when retreating. There are no reinforcements on the left, and no good generals on the right. I lost this game again." Jiang Junling nodded with a smile, saying, "Auntie, you let me win." "I didn't let you win." Li Yun shook her head and sighed, saying, "I really tried my best." Jiang Junling picked up the teacup in front of him and took a sip, saying, "Maybe men are more suited for the rough work of arranging troops and fighting." Li Yun chuckled, saying, "That's right. Whether it's arranging troops or fighting in the bureaucracy, men always have the advantage. Of course, the Qin family is an exception. That girl Qin Yiqian is pretty good at what she does. She's not much weaker than you guys." The smile on Jiang Junling's face didn't change. He looked at Li Yun and said, "You can't be envious of such things. Some people are God's favorite children, born with everything. Qin Yiqian must be God's own daughter." Li Yun sighed softly, saying, "A son should be like Jiang Junling, an adopted daughter should be like Qin Yiqian." "What a good saying. I think the two of you are really a good match, standing together like a perfect couple, making people like you from the bottom of their hearts." The sharpness in Jiang Junling's eyes disappeared in a flash, then returned to normal. He said with an indifferent expression, "This kind of thing depends on fate. It can't be forced. Military orders, not that I'm being nosy, but I think men should be more proactive in this kind of thing. Just like the saying goes, a son should be like Jiang Junling, and there is only one Jiang Junling in this world. An adopted daughter must be like Qin Yiqian, and there is only one Qin Yiqian in this world. If you don't take the initiative, there are countless young people who will. What are women most afraid of?" What she was most afraid of was a stalker. What if Yi Tian is snatched away by another man, how regretful would that be? Jiang Junling smiled and said, "That's because we're not fated to be together yet. I can't blame anyone else. Sai, you are brave and resourceful in other matters, but you are too passive when it comes to matters of the heart. Why don't I go back to Yanjin a few days later and discuss it with Old Master, asking him to personally communicate with the Qin family? Looking at the Qin family's intentions, if the Qin family's Old Master made a move, this matter would be 40% successful. If you can get that woman to agree, then this matter will be 80% done. If you and Yi Tian get along well, then wouldn't it be 100% done?" Jiang Junling pondered for a moment, then raised his cup to Li Yun and said, "If the wedding is successful, Auntie will definitely receive a gift to thank you." Li Yun covered her mouth and giggled. "You're treating me like an outsider. I'm just concerned about my nephew's marriage. Don't tell me I'm going to accept gifts? Since you don't object, I'll start taking care of it when I return to Beijing. I'm definitely going to be the matchmaker." Jiang Junling nodded and said, "Okay. Auntie will go back and prepare first. I still need to stay in Huaqing for a few days." Li Yun looked at Jiang Junling with a guilty expression and said, "This time, the military order has been wronged." Jiang Junling smiled and said, "What's there to be wronged about? It's all for one's family." Li Yun sighed and said, "It's like playing chess. First you cut off your horse's leg, then you tie up your elephant's leg. How can you win this game? Feng Xing is stupid. He did such an outrageous thing and gave that Feng Yan a handle to threaten the military order and our family of generals. Otherwise, how could the military order be so passive? How could we agree to his greedy conditions? Don't worry about the gains and losses of one city and one land." Jiang Junling smiled and said, "Hasn't the new game just begun?" "Yes, the new game has just begun." Li Yun praised and said, "Pulling the Lan family into the game, this is an extremely ingenious move. Not only did it disintegrate the beneficial alliance that Lu Chaoga built in Huaqing with the Qin family as the main force and the Lan family as the auxiliary force, it also expanded a huge space for the Zhang family to move again. If the Lan family and them were on the same side, the Zhang family would be in a difficult situation in Huaqing. No matter how capable Zhang Zhulu is, he wouldn't be able to lead the rise of Long Tu. It's already difficult to breathe. How can you talk about waving a knife and snatching a cake? However, things aren't going so smoothly. Jiang Junling's eyes became gloomy. Lon Mountain Valley actually did such a thing. It's indeed a bit unexpected. He's just a loach that likes to jump around. Li Yun sneered. Once he leaves the Lon family, he's nothing. I hope so. Jiang Junling said in a low voice. Fang Yan and I are just two chess players. We're busy placing the chess pieces on the chessboard. When the real day of victory arrives, I hope I'll be the final winner. Jiang Junling looked at the chessboard in front of him and said, just like just now. Li Yun looked at this confident man, her eyes sparkled and said, I believe that you'll definitely be the final winner. I'm ready. Jiang Junling said firmly, ready to welcome victory. The incident of Lon Mountain Valley leaving the Lon family was still fermenting in Huaqing, and it was getting more and more intense. Everyone thought that Lon Mountain Valley was crazy. If he wasn't crazy, why would he do such a crazy thing? Even the Lon family's internal members expressed their pity for Lon Mountain Valley's actions while happily scolding him for being an idiot. The most important thing in life is to make a choice. Before the result comes, who knows if it's right or wrong? When the outside world pushed Lon Mountain Valley to the teeth of the storm, Fang Yan was still living his simple and pure life. He woke up at 6 in the morning to exercise, took a shower and changed his clothes, and then prepared breakfast for himself and Lu Chaoga. Lu Chaoga was still resting at home. Fang Yan drove Lu Chaoga's car to the school for work. Fang Yan parked the car and was about to walk towards the school's security booth when the school's dean, Li Ziqiang, ran over and said while panting, Mr. Fang, I saw Principal Lu's car from afar and thought it was the old leader who came to the school for an inspection. I didn't expect it to be you who drove the old leader's car to work. Is Principal Lu all right? She's fine. Fang Yan said with a smile. I haven't seen the old leader for a while. I really miss her a little. Go back and help me ask when the old leader is free so that I can visit her. Li Ziqiang looked at Fang Yan expectantly and said. Fang Yan nodded and said, I will pass the message to her. But she has been really busy recently. I'm afraid she won't be able to find time for a while. The wound on Lu Chaoga's palm had not completely healed, and the wound on her neck was still scarring. Before the wound on her hand had completely healed and the scar on her neck had not completely disappeared, she probably wouldn't be willing to see anyone, right? Whether it was a woman or a goddess, loving beauty was innate to them. Of course, they were still male gods, and loving beauty was also innate to them. Li Ziqiang naturally knew that Lu Chaoga was very busy now. The small fireball product was popular all over the country. As the creator of the small fireball, how could Lu Chaoga be idle? Sometimes, Li Ziqiang would also reflect on himself. He wondered why he had been blinded by lard back then and kept going against Principal Lu. Back then, when everyone was rejecting and suppressing Lu Xiaoga, he had resolutely stood on her side and become her loyal confidant. When she left, whether he continued to stay at the school or followed her to Chaoyan Technology, his life would have been more comfortable than it was now, right? I know Principal Lu is busy, but you must ask her to take care of herself, Li Ziqiang said with concern. I will pass on Director Li's concern, Fang Yan said. Li Ziqiang laughed heartily and said, Thank you, brother. We old buddies at the school are still waiting to attend your wedding with Principal Lu. When you guys are going to have a wedding, you must let us know in advance. I won't be at the table that day. I will stand at the door and be your guest usher. Fang Yan smiled and didn't explain much. Because more and more people knew that he and Lu Chaoga were living together, everyone thought that they were already a couple. As for the wedding banquet, wasn't it natural? Li Ziqiang patted Fang Yan's shoulder and said, Mr. Fang is busy. I'll go check on the students' military training. Children nowadays are getting more and more delicate. They feel that they have been wronged by a little scratch. Sigh, how can they bear it when they enter society in the future? Li Ziqiang walked toward the playground in the backyard of the school, and Fang Yan walked from the inside to the security booth. The two of them went in opposite directions. When Fang Yan came to the security booth at the school gate, he saw Baldy and two colleagues gathered around the desk, as if they had discovered a new continent. Seeing Fang Yan come in, everyone looked at him with envy. Mr. Fang, someone sent you flowers. What kind of flowers are these? The purple ones are pretty. Mr. Fang, there's also a box with strawberry cake in it. Can I have a strawberry? Mr. Fang is outrageously handsome. It's natural for beautiful women to like him. Baldy looked at Fang Yan, as if he wanted to say something. Fong Yen looked at Baldy and said, "What do you want to say?" "The enemy's artillery is fierce, but no matter what, you have to hold on," Baldy said earnestly. He patted his chest, as if he was facing death calmly and said, "I will always be with you." A taxi parked in front of the school gate. Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin, who had disguised themselves with hats and masks, jumped out of the back seat of the taxi and ran toward the security booth of Rosefinch Secondary. Baldy didn't expect to see his idol again early in the morning after he had just separated from him last night. His face was full of surprise. When he was about to run out to greet them, Fong Yen grabbed his arm. "Director, I'm taking a day off today," Fong Yen said. Then, he quickly walked over and pulled Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin into the school. "These two girls. Do they want me to be on the news?" A few security guards at the security booth were full of envy and said, "Mr. Fong is the super king of security." Baldy felt very upset. His idol was good in all aspects, but his taste was too poor. Chapter 498. Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin were very busy every day. The company had booked an afternoon flight for them, and they had to rush to another city in the evening to prepare for a new concert. This was their job and their responsibility. They went to bed too late after eating supper last night. They could have had a good rest at noon. The reason why they overcame the urge to sleep late and came to find Fong Yen early in the morning was that they wanted to spend more time with Mr. Fong. But only for a short while. Fong Yen knew that they were tired, so he didn't take them to walk too far to see any street attractions. He just wanted to find a remote and quiet tea house where they could sit together and drink tea and chat happily. It was an antique tea house called the Thousand Leaves Tea House. The reason why Fong Yen chose this tea house in this long alley at first glance, and finally chose this tea house as the place to drink tea, was because the name of this tea house made him feel very close. Qian Yi. These two words represented a martial artist that was revered by others and a lady that was pitied by others. Heaven on earth. How are they doing now? Chiba Tea House. The name is quite interesting. Jiang Qin looked at the small wooden building and said, "The decoration is also very romantic. It's a bit Japanese style." Yuan Lin had a more accurate grasp of fashion. She looked at it carefully and said, "They mix the classical style of Hua Xia and the traditional Japanese tea ceremony culture together, so it doesn't feel out of place. The owner of this tea house is a person with taste. And the owner is a girl, otherwise there wouldn't be such a delicate decoration style." Fong Yen pushed open the wooden door of the tea house, and a beautiful girl in a white traditional Chinese dress greeted him. She asked with a smile, "Do you want a private room or a private room?" "Mr. Fong, do we want a private room?" Jiang Qin took off the sunglasses on the bridge of his nose and said with a smile, "The air outside is fresher. Let's sit near the window, smell the tea and bask in the sun. It's so petty. This is the life I dreamed of when I was a child." Fong Yen smiled and said, "Okay. Then a private room. A window seat." The girl led the three of them to the wooden table and chairs on the boat, and then asked with a smile, "What kind of tea would you like to drink?" Fong Yen looked at the decoration of the tea house with great interest and asked, "Is the owner of this tea house surnamed Chiba?" "Yes." The girl nodded and said proudly, "Our master's surname is Chiba. Since his surname is Chenya, he should be good at the way of tea. I wonder if the owner could brew a pot of tea for us?" The girl looked embarrassed and said, "Sir, I'm really sorry. The dojo master was busy and couldn't personally serve tea. I've also learned from the owner for 2 years. Why don't I serve a pot of tea to the 3 distinguished guests?" Fong Yen didn't mean to make things difficult for the girl. He nodded and said, "All right. Then you can make the tea. Just choose what you're good at." "Thank you for your understanding, sir." The girl bowed slightly to Fong Yen, then turned around to prepare the tea leaves. Soon, the girl came back with a bamboo basket woven from a bamboo raft. Inside the bamboo basket was a white and elegant teapot and teacups, as well as a small plate of pale yellow tea leaves. "Sir, I'll brew a pot of Longjing tea for you." The girl sat in front of the tea table with her upper body straight. Just this sitting posture alone made people's eyes light up. She deftly and nimbly took out the teapot and teacups from the bamboo basket and then quietly waited. There was no electronic iron kettle on the tea table. Seeing Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin looking at her with puzzled eyes, the girl chuckled and said, "Please wait a moment. We don't use an electric kettle to boil water. That will destroy the nutrients and vitality of the water. We'll use charcoal fire to boil the water from the Lotus Temple's well. The tea in the tea house is fished out from a deep well in the Lotus Temple and then transported by carriage. The water from the well is sweet and clear, and it doesn't contain any bleaching powder or other toxic substances. You'll know when you taste it. Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin's eyes lit up. We found a treasure land. Yuan Lin excitedly said. This is the first time I've heard that tea needs to be made from a well. Jiang Qin grinned and said, I want to taste how good your Longjing tea tastes. Miss Jiang, Miss Yuan, we definitely won't let you down, the girl said with a sweet smile. Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin were shocked. The two looked at each other. Jiang Qin stared at the girl warily and asked, You know us? I do know Miss Jiang and Miss Yuan, but you don't have to worry, the girl explained softly. The tea ceremony and music complement each other, especially classical music, which is the main component of our tea ceremony. Every staff member in our tea house has to listen to a lot of classical music, and there are musicians who specialize in performing for the guests. The Arasima group is very popular in Huaxia, and your classical and modern music perfectly blends together, making it very easy for the public to accept. It's something we have to learn from. Last night, the tea house master led all of us to your Treading on Snow for Plum Blossoms concert. We were fortunate enough to enjoy a feast for the eyes. I see, Jiang Qin said with a smile. I didn't expect to find a bosom friend here. May I ask how I should address you, sister? Yuan Lin took the initiative to ask. My name is Peony, the girl said. As he spoke, a young man in gray clothes brought over a pot of boiling water with white smoke. Peony immediately filled the pot with water and began to make tea. Her movements were as smooth as flowing water. It seemed that she had indeed spent many years immersed in the art of tea. Feng Yan nodded. Indeed, a great teacher produces a great student. Sister Peony, you said that your tea house has a musician as well. Could you ask her to perform for us? Yuan Lin smiled. Of course, Peony said. She waved her hand, and another girl in traditional Chinese clothing walked over. Peony said, Sister Lily, Miss Yuan wants to listen to a song. Why don't you play for them? The girl blushed slightly and said, Then I'll just have to show off in front of an expert. I don't play well. Miss Jiang, Miss Yuan, please teach me. We're looking forward to it. Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin clapped and cheered the girl on. The girl walked over to the guzheng in the corner and sat down. She calmed herself down, and the sound of the song flowed out like a gentle breeze or the dripping of rain. When will the Lord return? Jiang Qin looked at Feng Yan and explained softly. Feng Yan nodded and listened attentively to the girl's performance. When Lily finished playing, the three of them applauded enthusiastically. Lily walked up to Yuan Lin and said with a red face, Miss Yuan, I wonder if you could give me some pointers? I feel like I didn't play very well at the last part of the song. Yuan Lin nodded and said, There are some flaws. Longing for the return is a kind of deep expectation, not a kind of despair and sadness. I'll play it once, and you can listen carefully to the differences, okay? Thank you, Miss Yuan, Lily said excitedly. Yuan Lin walked over to the guzheng and sat down. She looked at where Feng Yan and Jiang Qin were sitting and quickly found the state to play. The fingers of both hands plucked on the strings. It was affectionate and made people feel a sense of loneliness and helplessness. When the song reached its climax, the wooden door of the tea house was forcefully pushed open with a bang. A group of men rushed into the tea house and occupied the largest table by the window on the right. The leader was a man in black trousers and a white shirt with a checkered vest over it. He had square eyes, thick eyebrows, and thin lips. With a cheeky smile, he said to Lily, Ask your owner to come out and make a pot of tea for me. Mr. Du, I'm sorry, our owner is not here. What tea do you want to drink? I'll make it for you, okay? Lily seemed to be very afraid of the young man, and her smile was flattering. Pah! A man in black slapped the table and scolded, You're going to make tea? Who do you think you are? How can our president Du swallow the tea you make? Ask your owner to come out, or we'll smash your shop. Little Black, how many times have I said that you should be polite when talking to girls? The man in the waistcoat stopped the man beside him from showing his power. He looked at Lily with a smile and said, These guys are all rough people. They haven't read many books, so their words are not very pleasant to hear. Miss Lily, don't lower yourself to their level.
It doesn't matter, Lily said with a smile. I'll make a pot of tea for Mr. Do. What tea does Mr. Do want to drink?
Lily, I'm sincere to you. Don't deliberately deceive me. You know that I'm here to see your owner. Ask her to come out and make me a pot of tea. I'm not a tiger. Can I eat her in one bite?
Mr. Do, our owner is really not here. Pa.
Lily's face was slapped by the man in black named Little Black.
Little Black wanted to slap again, but was stopped by the man in the waistcoat who said, Okay.
I brought you here to drink tea. I want to cultivate your temperament so that you won't get angry easily like a bunch of donkeys. We're still talking. How can you hit me? Little Black, apologize to Miss Lily. Little Black glanced at Lily coldly, but he didn't mean to apologize.
The man in the waistcoat smiled bitterly and said, These stubborn donkeys, I really can't do anything about them. Lily, go and ask your owner to come out.
I've been here every day this week. Except for the first 2 days when I could see your owner. Your owner has been avoiding me these days. This is not the way to treat a guest, right? Mr. Do, it's not that our owner doesn't want to see you.
She's really not in the shop. Clang!
The man in the waistcoat kicked Lily's stomach. Lily screamed in pain, fell back to the ground, and then rolled over repeatedly. She knocked down several tea tables and several pots of flowers. Chapter 499. The man in the waistcoat snapped his fingers, and the lackey next to him immediately handed him a thick cigar. Another lackey with sharp eyes and quick hands quickly lit the cigar for him. The man in the waistcoat took a puff of the cigar, and a large amount of smoke came out of his mouth. He stared with contempt at Lily, who was lying on the ground, unable to move, clutching her stomach but not daring to cry out. He sneered and said, Bitch, I gave you face but you don't want it. I'm talking to you nicely, but you treat me like a fool.
If you dare to say that the dojo master isn't here again, do you believe that I won't sew your mouth shut?
Lily's eyes were moist and tears kept flowing, but she didn't dare to refute the man in the waistcoat.
She knew what kind of person the man in the waistcoat was, and she also knew that this man could do everything he said. The man in the waistcoat pointed at Lily with his cigar in his hand and said, I'll tell you one last time, get your master to come out.
Otherwise, I'm going to ask you for an IQ insult fee. Xiao Hei kicked out, and a tea table beside his feet flew out. Crack! The tea table smashed into the wall and broke into pieces.
Even the wall that had been built rustled and fell to the ground.
Xiao Hei, you idiot! The man in the waistcoat scolded with a smile. I mean, if their dojo master doesn't come out, I'll ask them for an IQ insult fee. Now that the dojo master hasn't decided whether she wants to come out or not, why did you make the first move? Do you want me to come out or do you not want me to come out? Xiao Hei smiled honestly and stood at the side, no longer smashing anything. Instead, he looked around coldly.
When he saw Feng Yan and the others sitting not far away, he shouted angrily, All of you, get out of here.
Yuan Lin was just comparing skills with Lily, but in the blink of an eye, Lily was beaten to the ground. Her expression was extremely ugly as she scolded, You hooligans are going too far, the men in black laughed.
A thin bald man stared at Yuan Lin lecherously and said, Miss, you have a sharp eye.
We are really hooligans.
Hearing the baldy's witty words, the group of black-clothed men laughed even more happily.
Jiang Qin was worried that Yuan Lin would be at a disadvantage sitting there alone, so he quickly got up and walked over to stand with Yuan Lin. When the black-robed men saw Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin, these two pretty and lively girls, their eyes lit up, and some of them kept swallowing their saliva. Good luck, good luck. Originally, I wanted to accompany boss to pick up girls, but I didn't expect to see such a hot chick.
Brothers, don't fight with me. I've decided on the girl sitting in front of the piano.
I've always been scolded for not having artistic cells in my life. I want to study with this girl what artistic cells look like. Idiot, that's not a piano, it's a guzheng.
Hee, I want the girl with long hair, I like the oval-shaped face.
Shut the F***ck up, the man in the waistcoat shouted in a low voice. The hooligans didn't know what was going on and just looked at their boss in confusion. Could it be that he wanted to hog it all for himself? The boss looked at the two little girls affectionately. This kind of thing could really happen. The man in the waistcoat looked at Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin in confusion, and asked uncertainly, You two, are you the Arasima group? You don't need to know who we are. What right do you have to hit us? Yuan Lin said with a face full of anger. Jiang Qin didn't say anything. He just walked over and wanted to help Lily up from the ground. The kick from the man in the waistcoat was too heavy. Jiang Qin couldn't help Lily up even if he used all his strength. Lily's stomach hurt badly when she moved a little. It seemed that her internal organs were seriously injured.
Oh, the little girl's temper is quite big. The man in the waistcoat squinted his eyes and smiled. I originally wanted to ask about it clearly. If you are the Arasima group, I would more or less give you some face since you are also people of the scene. Since you don't know what's good for you, then don't blame my brothers for being impolite. So what if you are the Arasima group? When we support you, you are high and mighty, but when we step on you, you can only lie on the ground or crawl on the bed like a dog. Without needing the man in the waistcoat to order, the little baldy impatiently rushed in the direction of Yuan Lin. The other men in black were not willing to fall behind. They all followed behind the little baldy and rushed in the direction of Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin. The faster the hands, the slower the hands. They couldn't let their brothers snatch this kind of thing first.
Du Chun, don't touch my guests. A sweet voice shouted aloud. It was like a cool spring, like a mouthful of rose dew. Even if it was said in anger, it made people feel like they had drunk fine wine. The bones of their whole body softened a bit. A tall woman wearing a cheongsam embroidered with cherry blossoms walked down the stairs from the second floor, like a flower goddess who had been banished to the mortal world. Seeing that familiar yet strange face, Feng Yan's mind was a bit absent-minded. It had been 3 years, it was really a long time. It had changed too many people, and too many things had happened. Thank God, at such a time, on such an occasion, they were able to meet again. Forced by the woman's power or beauty, the gangsters stopped and waited for the next order from their boss. The man in the waistcoat looked at the woman coming down the stairs in amazement. He put out the cigar in his hand in the ashtray, stood up from the chair, and said with a gentle smile, I knew you were here. If you had come down earlier, my little friends wouldn't have dared to be presumptuous in front of you. He waved his hand, and the men in black immediately retreated. The cherry blossom woman walked in front of the man in the waistcoat in high heels, squatted down to help Yuri, and asked with concern, Yuri, how do you feel? Do you feel uncomfortable anywhere? Master, my stomach hurts, Yuri said with a face full of tears. The man in the waistcoat's kick was sharp and fierce, and the girl's delicate body couldn't bear it at all. Don't be afraid, it will be fine. I will take you to the hospital now. The cherry blossom woman held Yuri's hand and comforted her. I'll do it, the man in the waistcoat said attentively. It's my fault. If I hadn't brought these boorish men here, Miss Yuri wouldn't have been injured. I will bear the responsibility. I will send someone to take her to the hospital. The man in the waistcoat waved his hand, and 2 men in black came over to move the girl. No need, the cherry blossom woman refused. I will take care of my family myself. Your family is my family. Why are you being so polite with me? The man in the waistcoat said with a smile. What are you waiting for? Quickly send her to the hospital for a full body checkup. You idiots, you can't do anything but spoil things. In the future, don't hurt people so easily. Can't you think before you do something? The gangsters were timid, and they didn't have the courage to tell the truth. If you don't take the blame for the boss at this time, what does the boss want you to do? I said no. The cherry blossom woman's voice suddenly rose, and she stared angrily at the men in black who ran over to take Yuri away. All right. All of you come back. The man in the waistcoat called his men back. He squatted down to support Yuri's arm and said, I will accompany you to take her to the hospital for a checkup. Don't worry, I will bear all the expenses. Yuri avoided him in fear, as if she was avoiding a poisonous snake. She didn't dare to let the man in the waistcoat touch her body. I don't need you. The cherry blossom woman pushed the man's hand away. The man in the waistcoat's face turned cold and he said, Chiba Kaoru, are you rejecting me? Yes. The cherry blossom woman's voice was very firm, and she said, The answer is the same as the first time, I don't like you. Not only do I not like you, but I also hate you. The women of our Chiba family will never like a hooligan without a sense of morality. That is an insult to the Chiba family, and an insult to the God of Swords family. The man in the waistcoat's face changed several times, and then he slapped the cherry blossom woman's cheek. The cherry blossom woman actually had some martial arts background, and she tilted her head back, just in time to avoid his attack. Interesting.
The man in the waistcoat laughed sinisterly.
You dare to dodge? I'd like to see how long you can hide. As he spoke, he slapped the cherry blossom woman's face again. Slap. His arm was raised in mid-air, but he couldn't swing her down no matter what. Someone grabbed his arm, and there was a big hand on his wrist.
The man in the waistcoat looked up and saw that it was the young customer who had been drinking tea by the window. He said with a face full of sarcasm, "If I were you, I would immediately kneel down and kowtow 3 times, and then scram as far as I can."
"I don't think so," Fong Yan said.
He began to exert force with his palm.
Crack, crack. The sound of soybeans being stir-fried could be heard.
Let go, let go. The man in the waistcoat hadn't felt the pain just now.
By the time he truly felt it, the pain was already unbearable. His breathing became rapid, and even the pain made it difficult for him to breathe. The muscles on his face kept twitching, as if he had just received an electric shock. No, he was currently receiving an electric shock. Tears came out of his eyes. Yes, they were really tears. They were the things that he had thought were the most fragile and cheap. It was a heart-wrenching pain, a pain that burned his soul. He wanted to scream, but even so, he had lost the strength to do so. The man in the waistcoat's arm began to change shape, and then it began to twist. In the end, it turned into a sausage that seemed to be supported by nothing hard. When Fong Yan let go of the waistcoat's wrist, the man had already collapsed to the ground like a pile of mud. Fong Yan had broken the bones of the man's hand inch by inch with his soft force. Even the most brilliant doctor couldn't repair them. Chapter 500. Because the pain almost made him faint, but because of the pain, he kept his brain awake. That kind of pain was like a steel knife, cutting into the deep cortex of his brain again and again. It made his whole body tremble in pain, but he could clearly feel the process of the steel knife cutting into the cortex. The man in the waistcoat didn't expect that he would encounter such a devastating blow when he just came to a small tea house to drink tea and flirt with girls. Fong Yan appeared too suddenly and clasped the wrist of the man in the waistcoat. When the men in black found that their boss was caught, they couldn't act rashly. When Fong Yan took the initiative to release the wrist of the man in the waistcoat, Du Chun's #1 thug, Little Hay, who had long been on guard, immediately rushed toward Fong Yan and stabbed the sharp dagger in his hand toward Fong Yan's chest. This guy was ready to cut Fong Yan's chest open. Little Hay didn't know any martial arts, nor did he have any magical inner strength mental cultivation method. But he was naughty since childhood and was invincible in the whole street. His skills were honed through hundreds of battles, big and small. They were simple and fierce, without any fancy or superfluous moves. Fighters were most afraid of killing intent. There were 2 ways to cultivate killing intent. One was to be cruel to the enemy, and every move must take the enemy's life. The other was to be cruel to oneself, not afraid of death, and only to hurt the enemy. Little Hay was the kind of person who was cruel to the enemy. Even if it was the first time they met, he still put on a posture of stabbing. It made people feel cold and easily lose the ability to fight. If an ordinary person met an opponent like Little Hay, the best and most appropriate way was to turn around and run, or squat down with his hands on his head and beg the opponent to be a little gentle. Unfortunately, he met Fong Yan. Fong Yan never used his martial arts to bully others. However, if others wanted to use force to bully him, his counterattack would be particularly cruel and fierce. Fong Yan's body was perfectly straight, standing in place without dodging or evading. His eyes were filled with ridicule as he stared at Xiao He. He had a cold and aloof attitude, as if saying, "Come at me, I can send you flying with one slap." Xiao He felt insulted, and became even angrier. Originally, he had only used 60% of his strength, but now he increased it to 12%. He used all the strength in his body to stab at Fong Yan's chest. He wanted to use this stab to stab a big hole in Fong Yan's internal organs. Quang quang quang. Their bodies were extremely close to each other. Pa! Little Black stabbed out, but the blade did not enter Fong Yan's body. The blade carried a gust of cold wind as it flew towards Fong Yan. However, the blade stopped a few centimeters away from Fong Yan. Fong Yan held the blade between his 2 fingers as if he was holding a strand of hair between his fingers. Little Black's face was full of fear. He pulled out his saber and wanted to retreat. He felt a sense of danger, the kind of powerlessness that an egg would feel when facing a rock. How could Fong Yan let him go so easily?
With a flick of his finger, the dagger appeared in his hand. Before Little Black could turn around and leave, Fong Yen had already stabbed the dagger into his left ribs. Little Black gave a muffled groan, his body retreated, and then fell to the ground. Blood seeped out from the gaps between his fingers that were covering the wound. Drop by drop, it was as if it was in a hurry to gather on the bluestone ground. From Little Black's attack to Little Black's fall, all of this happened in a flash. The other black-clothed men saw that Little Black, who was the most capable and the best among them, was taken down in less than a round, and his body was ruthlessly stabbed by someone. Each and every one of them was like a frightened bird, looking at each other, not daring to rush forward. Fong Yan's eyes swept across their faces.
They all collectively took a few steps back.
You, a man in black stuttered. Do you know, who did you offend?
You're dead, no one can save you. Tell Du Qing to come see me.
Fong Yen glanced at them and said expressionlessly,
Du Qing? Everyone looked at Fong Yen in horror. Hearing Fong Yen take the initiative to mention Du Qing's name, they were even more shocked than when Fong Yen stabbed Little Black. He knew who Du Qing was, but he still dared to injure his junior? He knew who Du Qing was, but he still dared to stab his little brother? He knew who Du Qing was, but he still dared to say that he wanted Du Qing to come see him. Was he sick? Was Du Qing someone that anyone could see just because they wanted to? Was Du Qing someone that anyone could see just because they wanted to? Scram! Fong Yen shouted coldly. Crash! The men in black were in a panic. Du Chun, whose arm was crushed, was carried away by them. Little Black, whose ribs were stabbed, was carried away by them. In less than a minute, there was not a single hooligan left in the Chiaki tea house.
They had all left, except for the pool of blood on the ground and the broken flower pots on the coffee table that proved that they had been here.
Fong Yen then looked at the cherry blossom woman who was looking at him in surprise and said with a smile, Chiba Kaori, are you all right?
Mr. Fong, the cherry blossom woman called out happily, I didn't expect to see you here.
I just happened to pass by and saw the Chiaki tea house's signboard, so I wanted to come in and have a seat, Fong Yen explained. Can I help you take a look at your colleague?
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Fong, Chiba Kaori said gratefully. Compared to 3 years ago, her Huaxia language had improved by leaps and bounds. With her current performance, she could even become a broadcaster at a TV station. Fong Yen squatted down, held Yuri's wrist, and felt her pulse. He said, there's a blockage in her stomach. If she doesn't get rid of it, it will have a great impact on her body. I'll write a prescription.
After you get the medicine, she'll be fine after taking it for 3 days. As Fong Yen spoke, he had already walked to the edge of the desk that was specially prepared for the guests in the tea house.
He dipped the brush in ink and wrote a prescription on the white rice paper.
Then, he handed the white paper to Chiba Kaoru and said, simmer the medicine for 2 hours and pour it out.
Wrap the hot medicinal dregs with a clean gauze and wipe it on your stomach. This can help to remove blood clots and also has the effect of cleansing the uterus and detoxifying the uterus. When the medicine is cold, drink it. Let her go back and rest for a few days. Don't come out to work for a few days. While Chiba Kaori arranged for someone to get the medicine according to the prescription, she also asked Peony and a waitress named Money to send Yuri back to rest. After dealing with the matters in the tea house, Chiba Kaori looked at Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin and said, Mr. Fong, Miss Jiang, Miss Yuan, if you don't mind, can I make a pot of tea for you to try? Fong Yen said to Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin, Chiba Kaori is from East Asia. She's proficient in the tea ceremony. I'm far inferior to her. Chiba Kaori chuckled and said, you still lost to Qin Etienne. Jiang Qin's eyes flashed as he looked at Chiba Kaori and asked, Mr. Fong, is Sister Chiba Kaori also your student?
Yes.
Chiba Kaori nodded and said, I used to be Mr. Fong's student. It's just that I didn't have enough time to learn much about Mr. Fong's profound knowledge. Yuan Lin giggled and said, Mr. Fong, why do I feel like all your students are beauties? Whether it's Sister Qin or Sister Chiba Kaori, any one of them is on the same level as the prettiest girl in the city. Isn't it unfair to the other teachers that there are so many of them in your class? Maybe it's because I'm more popular, Fong Yen said with a smile. Fong Yen was very happy to meet an old friend in a foreign land. Chiba Kaori was someone that Fong Yen respected and missed. Chiba Kaori was the daughter of his old friend and his former student. With these two feelings, Fong Yen naturally hoped that she could live a happy life. Chiba Kaori was making tea. She used the same tea leaves and the same tea water, but the taste was very different from before. Moreover, Chiba Kaori's tea-making technique was very complicated and beautiful. There is an almost religious piety in performing some of the ancient movements. Yes, Chiba Kaori's religion was the tea ceremony. Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin's faces were filled with admiration. They didn't expect the act of making tea to have so many steps, and the process was so pleasing to the eye. Jiang Qin was suddenly inspired, and he said happily, "Sister Chiba, I want to write a song about the tea ceremony. If I need your help, don't say no." "Of course not." Chiba Kaori smiled gently. "Promoting the tea ceremony has been my lifelong wish." Fang Yan looked at Chiba Kaori and said, "Are you promoting the tea ceremony of Huaxia or Japan?" "I'm promoting the tea ceremony of Huaxia and Japan," Chiba Kaori said. Fang Yan was stunned, and he said with a smile, "I was too stubborn. My father was also a stubborn person. That's why he made that choice." Chiba Kaori's eyes were a little gloomy. Clearly, she still hadn't gotten over her father's death. "You men have a longer and narrower heart. I'm a woman. I just like the tea ceremony, regardless of whether it's Huaxia or Japan. That's all. Back then you told me that you'd stay in Huaxia. I didn't expect you to really not go back," Fang Yan said with a sigh. "I can't leave." Chiba Kaori shook her head. "Mom went back, and so did my brother. If I leave too, he'll be lonely. Although he never said it, he's very afraid of being alone." "I miss him too," Fang Yan said. "I visit him often. The more I see him, the more I feel that he's a great person." While they were chatting over tea, the glass wooden door of Chiba Tea House was pushed open by two men in black. Chapter 501. The two men in black pushed open the glass wooden door, one on the left and one on the right, and then stood on both sides of the wooden door. A man in a dark blue suit with a scarf around his neck walked in, followed by a tall and beautiful woman. Du Qing was here. He was cultured and elegant, with a strong scholarly aura around him. If no one introduced him, it would be hard to tell that this man was the king of Huaqing's underworld. When Du Qing saw Fang Yan, he laughed and walked over, saying, "Brother Fang, long time no see. You look even better than before." Fang Yan stood up and shook hands with Du Qing. Then, he said with a smile, "Mr. Du, you look like you're riding on the crest of success. Compared to 3 years ago, you look even younger." "Really?" Du Qing was overjoyed. "I wouldn't believe it if someone else said it, but since Brother Fang said it, then I'll gladly accept it. Brother Fang, you left for 3 years. How could you be so heartless, not even giving Brother a call? Not even leaving a message for Brother?" "I went to visit the Liu family a few times and asked about your situation, but he didn't want to say much, only saying that he was being filial at home." The smile on Du Qing's face disappeared, and his big hand held Fang Yan's hand tightly, saying, "Brother, I was worried, so I asked someone to ask around, but I didn't expect to hear such grievous news. I immediately called you, but I couldn't get through. Brother, it's a little late to say this, but don't be too sad." "Thank you, Brother Du," Fang Yan said gratefully. His father died in battle, and Fang Yan was disheartened. Because Fang Yan decided not to return to Huaqing for the time being, the phone was constantly ringing, and it was abnormally noisy. In order to completely calm down, Fang Yan turned off his phone. This turned off for 3 years. No matter if Du Qing's concern was sincere or not, Fang Yan still owed him a favor for being willing to call and comfort someone at that time. "What are you thanking me for?" "I didn't help much, it's my fault," Du Qing said with an apologetic expression. Fang Yan invited Du Qing to sit down, and said to Li Ya, who was standing behind Du Qing, "Miss Li, please take a seat." Li Ya stood beside Du Qing and said mockingly, "I never thought that Mr. Fang would still remember a small fry like me, it's really flattering." Li Ya's words were filled with thorns, but Fang Yan did not think much of it, and said, "My memory has always been good. I can even remember the name of a kitten or puppy that I've dealt with before." "Fang Yan, don't go too far." Li Ya slapped the table and shouted angrily, "Li Ya!" Du Qing waved his hand, signaling Li Ya not to be rash, and said, "Sit down and drink some tea." Li Ya did not dare to disobey her uncle's orders, and angrily sat beside Jiang Qin. Du Qing chuckled as he looked at Fang Yan and said, "Children have a stubborn temper and have been sulking with me the whole way."
Children are still immature, and quarreling with their parents is a common occurrence.
Brother Du, don't take it to heart.
Feng Yan comforted her.
Feng Yan, who's a child? Who's immature? What did my brother do for you to beat him up like this? What kind of deep hatred do you have for him to crush someone else's arm? Do you know that he's already ruined? That hand is already ruined. The doctor said that it can't be cured, and that it will never be cured. Leah shouted with red eyes, her eyes filled with burning hatred. Du Chun was not Du Qing's son, but the son of Du Qing's younger brother. Du Qing's father was a carpenter. Once when he was working on a beam, he fell and broke his leg, causing the family's living conditions to plummet. Du Qing dropped out of school early, and after entering society, he joined a gang. Later on, he was supported by the gang leader, and quickly completed his primitive accumulation. Only then did he have his current status and wealth. However, Du Qing's younger brother, Du Hong, inherited his father's business and became a carpenter. He stayed in his hometown to build houses and make furniture. Du Hong did not have any education either, and he enjoyed his job as a carpenter very much. He stayed in his hometown to take care of his parents and was unwilling to come out. So Du Qing brought his younger brother's youngest son, Du Chun, out. Du Chun was Du Qing's nephew, and he owned a few bars. With Du Qing's care, he lived a happy and comfortable life. Du Chun knew that his uncle liked Li Ya, so he tried to get close to Li Ya. The two of them had a good relationship. Du Chun had a hotel by the river nearby. One time, when he came over for tea with his friends, he saw Chiba Kaori performing the tea ceremony for the guests. He was shocked and chased after her repeatedly. Chiba Kaori rejected him twice, but Du Chun did not give up and continued to come to the tea house every day. After not seeing Chiba Kaori for a few days, Du Chun's gentlemanly and gentle appearance disappeared. He became more and more impatient, and he became harsher and harsher to the staff of the tea house. This time, he brought enough people, preparing to smash the tea house if Chiba Kaori tried to avoid him again. However, he did not expect to bump into Feng Yan, Jiang Qin, and the others who had come to drink tea. Du Chun was acting cool to his heart's content, and someone could not stand it anymore. Feng Yan struck out with lightning speed and instantly exterminated him. They were the same kind of people, why rush to torture each other? Li Ya and Du Chun had an extremely good relationship, and the news of Du Chun being injured and hospitalized quickly reached Du Qing and Li Ya's ears. Li Ya wanted to rush to the hospital to visit Du Chun, but Du Qing said that he wanted to visit Feng Yan directly at the tea house. The two of them had different opinions. Li Ya said that Du Qing did not care about Du Chun's life and death, and did not give Du Qing a good look along the way. Du Qing was a generous elder, so he naturally would not lower himself to Li Ya's level. However, on the way, they received a call from the hospital, saying that they had already examined Du Chun's body. The bones in Du Chun's right arm were shattered, and he was completely crippled. There was no possibility of recovery. When Li Ya heard the bad news, she cried on the spot. When she saw Feng Yan, her attitude was naturally bad, and she wanted to rush up and tear off a piece of his flesh.
He didn't do anything,
Feng Yan said indifferently.
Nothing?
You didn't do anything, yet you beat him up like this? Just crushing other people's bones?
Li Ya stared at Feng Yan in disbelief and said, "Are you a pervert? He only brought people over to smash someone else's shop and injure the staff of the tea house. Actually, it's not a heinous crime." Feng Yan pointed at Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin and said, "Oh, he even ordered the group of little bastards he brought to molest the two of them.
If they were to molest Miss Li, how would Miss Li deal with them?" Li Ya choked. All right, we can also make some deductions and hypotheses. He has always wanted to pursue one of my students, the owner of this tea house, Miss Chiba Kaoru. Because Miss Chiba Kaoru rejected his feelings, he became more and more violent. Just now, he wanted to slap her in front of us. If Miss Chiba Kaoru rejected him more thoroughly, or made him completely give up, what else would he do?
Feng Yan looked at Du Qing and asked, "Brother Du, guess what else would he do?"
One arm is not unjust, Du Qing said in a deep voice.
He raised the teacup in front of him and said, "If I were there, I would at least want both of his arms."
Thank you, Brother Feng, for saving me some face.
Uncle, Li Ya, Feng Yan is not wrong in this matter, Du Qing said with a serious expression.
Others might not know, but don't you know? How did I educate them? How did I ask them to?
People who bully people should have their heads chopped off in ancient times. Leah was unconvinced, but she could only suppress this anger in her heart.
Who asked Uncle Du Qing to stand on his side and speak up for him.
Du Qing looked at Chiba Kaoru and said, "This junior was rude and caused Miss Yi to feel wronged.
How about this? Get someone to make a list, and I will compensate for all the losses of the tea house.
We will also bear the medical expenses and mental damage of the injured staff members. By the way, Miss Yi can rest assured that no one will come looking for trouble in the future." Du Qing took out a name card from his pocket and placed it in front of Chiba Kaoru and said, "If any blind thieves or scoundrels come looking for trouble, Miss Yi can call this number. My friends in Huaqing will more or less give me some face."
Thank you, Mr. Du, for taking care of me. Chiba Kaoru is very grateful. Chiba Kaoru held the name card with both hands and respectfully bowed to Du Qing to thank him. Although Chiba Kaoru had lived in Huaxia for many years, she still retained some traditional Japanese habits. Du Qing waved his hand and said, "I am ashamed. Fong Yan and I call each other brother, and his students are also my juniors. I should have taken care of you, but I didn't expect you to be hurt like this. This is my fault, and I am only making up for some of the losses. I hope you can understand."
When the tea house was done with the work, Du Qing looked at Fong Yan and said, "Brother Fong, can we have a private talk?"
"No problem." Fong Yan nodded.
He turned to look at Chiba Kaoru, who was beside him, and asked, "Is there a quiet place here?" Chiba Kaoru stood up and said, "There is a private room upstairs, I will take you there."
"There is no need.
We can go there by ourselves," Fong Yan said and waved his hand.
"Don't worry, we won't get lost."
Chiba Kaoru covered her mouth and laughed and said, "Mr. Fong is still so humorous."
Fong Yan made an inviting gesture and entered the private room on the second floor of the Thousand Leaves Tea House with Du Qing. Leah looked at Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin, then looked at Chiba Kaoru, who was making tea gently, and asked, "Are you all his students?"
"Yes," the three girls answered at the same time.
"Pervert." Leah sneered. What kind of teacher would bring the prettiest girl in the class out for tea? Wasn't the answer simple and clear? "You are the pervert," Jiang Qin retorted. "That's right.
One look and I can tell you are not a good person. Mr. Fong is a very good man. Don't belittle him like this." Leah felt that she had no chance of winning against the three of them.
Chapter 502. The second floor was filled with individual private rooms. They were also constructed with a large amount of wood. The decorations were more exquisite than the ones below, but it didn't seem too complicated. It was as antique as the ones below, which made people feel better for no reason. Fong Yan and Du Qing chose a room near the window and sat down. They didn't even call for the waiter to bring them tea. "What do you want?" Du Qing looked at Fong Yan sitting opposite him and asked in a low voice. After not seeing him for 3 years, this man's change could be described as heaven and earth. A year ago, Fong Yan was smart, sharp, had a bright smile and a joking attitude. He didn't seem to care about anyone or anything, and he played around in this world with a playful attitude. Some people hated him, but there were also people who liked him from the bottom of their hearts. Because this kind of person didn't look like a bad person at first glance. But now, Fong Yan was gloomy and cold. From the way he crushed Du Chun's arm and stabbed the knife into Xiao Hei's ribs, it could be seen that he was also a little cruel. His eyes were still clear, but the occasional flash of sharpness was frightening. His smile was still moving, but when the corners of his mouth curled up slightly and his eyes narrowed slightly, it was enough to frighten people. His heart was vicious, and his eyes were murderous. These two temperaments were contradictory to his pure temperament. They were easily highlighted, and he couldn't suppress them even if he wanted to. Du Qing knew what Fong Yan had experienced, and he also understood why he had such a change. The hatred of killing one's father was absolutely irreconcilable. If someone treated his parents like this, Du Qing guaranteed that he would do it 10 times or 100 times more extreme than Fong Yan. But, this kind of change happened to someone else, it was still a little hard to get used to. The current Fong Yan made people afraid, and it was hard for people to get close to him like they used to. Emotions were the most hurtful. This saying was indeed true. "I want what my eyes can see," Fong Yan said. Du Qing was stunned. What could his eyes see? Is this statement in a broad sense or a narrow sense? Was it a statement of fact or a clever analogy?
Was it his current field of vision, or the whole of watching? Or an even more distant and vast territory? Du Qing was very frustrated. If he had known this would happen, he would have worked hard to learn Chinese. Otherwise, he would have understood what Feng Yan was talking about. He really didn't like dealing with language teachers, whether it was in the past or now. At the very least, Du Qing knew that he was looking at him. It was his ability, his intelligence, everything he controlled and possessed, including warm friendship or unwavering loyalty. Du Qing remained silent for a long time. Feng Yan was not in a hurry. He sat in front of the window and watched the people coming and going on the street below. Everyone had a different expression on their faces, and everyone's eyes were filled with worries. He was not the only one who was tired. Everyone's life was not easy. When Feng Yan was deep in thought, Du Qing suddenly asked, "What can you give me?" Feng Yan's crossed fingers loosened a little. Du Qing saw this scene and thought to himself, he's still a young man after all. He didn't know why, but seeing this scene made Du Qing feel a lot more comfortable, and the wariness in his heart also decreased a lot. An invulnerable person was the scariest. Everyone should have their own weakness. Only those with weaknesses were worthy of being close to. It was just that most people didn't understand this. "I'll give you more glory," Feng Yan said with a smile. "What you urgently need now and what you can't imagine." Feng Yan and Du Qing didn't let everyone wait for too long. In less than 10 minutes, the two of them came out one after another. Both of them had warm smiles on their faces, indicating that they were chatting happily upstairs. Du Qing and Feng Yan shook hands again and sincerely invited, "Brother Feng, I've specially left some cakes and some good tea. You must come to my place when you have time. I'll definitely bother you." Feng Yan nodded and agreed. Du Qing then shook hands with Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin to bid farewell. As he held Yuan Lin's hand, he said, "Your uncle and I are considered old friends. Please send my regards to him when you have the chance. He's elusive and it's not easy to find him for a cup of tea." "I will." Yuan Lin nodded and agreed with a sweet smile. Du Qing shook hands with Chiba Kaori and said, "Miss Yi, I'm really sorry. Your father is a martial artist that I respect very much. I won't let his most beloved daughter experience something like this again. As long as you don't leave watching, I'll ensure your safety. If anyone dares to bully you again, I'll repay them 100 times over." "Thank you, Mr. Du." Chiba Kaori bowed deeply to Du Qing. Although she didn't know what Mr. Feng and Du Qing were talking about upstairs, the fact that Du Qing said something like that after coming downstairs proved that he was indeed expressing his attitude. Du Qing patted Li Ya's shoulder and said, "Let's go. We won't disturb their reunion." Li Ya followed behind Du Qing and walked out of the door. She had no interest or mood to greet anyone. A great teacher produces a great disciple, and an evil teacher produces an evil disciple. After Li Ya got on the car, she immediately poured out her dissatisfaction and said, "Uncle, do we need to give that Feng Yan so much face? Who does he think he is? He's so arrogant. He hit our people, and he still has the face to ask us to come and see him? We should indeed come and see him. Wouldn't it be better to bring a few dozen people to see him?" Du Qing glanced at Li Ya and said earnestly, "Do you think you can make Feng Yan stay just because you brought a few dozen people? Do you think he's a god? A few dozen people can't make him stay. If a few dozen people can't make him stay, then we'll bring 300 to 500 people. We have a lot of people anyway," Li Ya said unhappily. Du Qing shook his head lightly and said, "Even 300 to 500 people can't make him stay." Du Qing held Li Ya's hand and said with a serious expression, "Xiaoya, Feng Yan is not from the same world as us. This kind of person, either be friends or never get to know each other, never be enemies. It's too dangerous. It's hard to defend against." "Uncle, who is he?" "Inner martial world." "Is there really a martial world? What is the martial world? And what is the inner river lake?" Li Ya kept asking like a curious baby. "It's too complicated and dangerous inside. It's best if you don't ask too much," Du Qing said. Although Li Ya was full of questions, she couldn't do anything if her uncle didn't say anything. The current Feng Yan is no longer the Feng Yan of the past. Du Qing sighed and said, "That's right. In the past, I thought he was cheeky and not too annoying. But now he's simply an egomaniac." "He's not an egomaniac," Du Qing said. "He really is. He has the capital to be arrogant.
Rosefinch Secondary's teacher? He has a grandfather who's a prime minister in the academic world?
Du Qing shook his head and said, Fang Yan left watching for 3 years, so you stopped paying attention to him, or perhaps you've never paid attention to such a man.
The current watching is a huge coliseum.
There are 2 top-notch experts engaged in a bloody battle. One of them is Yanjing General Family's Jiang Junling.
Jiang Junling from Jiang Junling?
Li Ye was shocked.
The other person is Fang Yan. Du Qing said.
Fang Yan? What gives him the right?
Li Ye asked in disbelief. It was not only Li Ye. This kind of news would be shocking to anyone. One was a schoolteacher, and the other was the future heir to Yanjing's richest family.
Their status, wealth, resources, and connections were all unequal. It was like a battle between an ant and a giant elephant.
How could an ant make a giant elephant tumble?
Because he's Fang Yan of the Inner Society, because he's the major shareholder of Chaoyan Technology, because he owns 30% of Long Tu Group's shares, because the 4 prodigies of Huaqing are under his tail, because Lanshan Valley was forced out of the family because of him. It's unknown whether Qiang Longtan is dead or alive, but he might have died in his hands. Because of him, Jiang Fengxing was abandoned by his family and became a wandering soul in the sea. Long Tu Group was torn apart, and Jiang Junling was forced to bow down to him by the power he created, and was bitten by him. This is Fang Yan, the young man you met just now. Tell me what gives him the right.
Li Ye was deeply shocked. Her eyes widened and her mouth slightly opened.
After being stunned for a long time, she cursed without a care for her image and said, F***CK, is this guy a pervert? He's so skilled, has such a powerful background, and his wealth is dozens of times more than ours. He didn't want to be a successful person in society, but went to be a school teacher.
Is he crazy? Crazy.
Du Qing smiled bitterly and said, Silly child, I don't know if he's a pervert or crazy, but if we want to be enemies with him, then we're all perverts and crazy. Du Chun, this idiot, Li Ye scolded angrily. Of all people he could have provoked, why did he have to provoke Fang Yan? This time he kicked an iron plate, and one of his arms is gone. Can it really not be fixed? If it really can't be fixed, we can send it abroad to have a look. Du Qing's eyes became fierce, like an enraged old leopard, his voice cold and murderous as he said, I originally thought that since this matter has nothing to do with us, we'll be impartial and not offend anyone, but there are people who want to use us as a good card. They borrowed my hand, Du Qing. Are they not afraid that I'll cut off the arm they stretched out? Li Ye was shocked. She looked at Du Qing with a face full of shock and asked, Uncle, you mean, go to the hospital?
Du Qing said in a low voice. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.